Chapter 176, Uninvited Guest. Of course, all this happened more than 100 kilometers away. Ryan is completely unaware, but he also has a hunch that something bad will happen. Naturally, in this case, he decided to work harder, taking advantage of the time to improve his strength. So after the practice with Hermione, he didn't choose to relax for the rest of the weekend, but kept studying the skills he had mastered, hoping to continue to strengthen his strength a little bit. It's just that improving the strength is always a matter of time. On the weekend night, when he felt a little anxious, he suddenly received a reminder from the grocery store that he had a new customer. Maybe this was an opportunity. Ryan thought about coming to the Wonji grocery store. As soon as he arrived at the grocery store, he found that the ground seemed to be covered with a layer of soft emerald green. He bent down carefully and looked at it. It covered the whole ground. The store seemed to be covered with a green carpet. Xiaoqing, what are you doing? Ryan asked, looking at a flower pot in the corner of the carpet. I saw that the flower above turned into a snake's head, and connected it through the sole to tell Ryan that he had eaten a little lately, so now he lay here to rest. Sure enough, my pets are different from others. People are full of pets, either squatting there, or lying there motionless. Only my pet personality can lie on the ground when I rest. Ryan shook his head helplessly, letting Wonji grocery store put the guests in. The person who came in this time was a middle-aged man wearing a costume. After seeing his face, Ryan only found out that he was very familiar with him. At least the number of times he saw this face in the short video he watched in the last station at Station B was quite a lot. So he said with his hands in fists, "Mr. Welcome to visit. I wonder why you came to this store this time?" "Here, where is this?" "Who are you?" Buchan said nervously. Ryan could hear his voice become sharper, and then looked carefully at his face. Ryan could see that some of his beard was sticky go up. It seems that the head of his been cut. After discovering the secret, Ryan used an iron wand on his back with a magic wand, and then used the soul link to prepare Xiaoqing, who disguised himself as a pot of flowering plants in the pot next to him. After everything was ready, Ryan cleared his throat and said, "This is a shop in the upper realm. Only people with great regrets in their hearts can find it. Here, as long as you can pay enough, no matter what dreams can be achieved. A really good person, then there is no guilt for bragging a little." After speaking, Ryan looked up and down and looked at Buchan. Then he said, "I think your face is tired, your hair has fallen off, and your voice has become sharp. Is there something unspeakable?" How do you know that you peeked at me?" This word of my words did not fall, and I saw Buchan's figure a ghost and stab a straight sword at Ryan, but the whole person was lying on the ground just after starting. Because Xiaoqing had just received Ryan's order, he activated the entire vine rug before Buchan had started, suddenly entangled his feet when he wanted to use light skill to leap over and attack Ryan. This directly led to Buchan lying directly on the ground because his feet were entangled. The vine mixed with the basilisk and the devil's net and strengthened by a lot of magic is not something that Buchan can cut, and within a few minutes Buchan was wrapped into a dumpling, with only his face exposed. Actually dare to sneak attack. Buchan, you are so brave. After that, Ryan launched Leafer to form a current between his hands. It seems that you want to enjoy the thunderstorm. Xian Rao Ming, the villain is just confused for a moment. Please let Xian put the villain as a fart. After seeing the lightning in Ryan's hand, Buchan immediately lost control and begged for mercy. Being able to bend and stretch is worthy of being a gentleman's sword that can be the head of Huashan. Ryan waved his hands to relax the vines a little bit, and then said, "Shangxian wouldn't dare to do it, but I did some things. If you dare to kill like this, don't blame me for being rude." A finger was placed next to a stool, a thunder flashed, and the entire stool was burned into a pile of coke. At this time, Buchan secretly swallowed and spit foam, and then the whole body fell on his knees on the ground. "Shangxian, I revitalized my Taoist Huashan school. I had to practice the Sunflower Sacred Book, and my body was damaged." "A clear road. Minglu is not without it," Lane said lightly, and Buchan was excited when he heard this sentence. "But I am a store in Wonji, and pay attention to how much you pay. It is not impossible for you to let some missing organs grow back. It depends on what you can come up with for replacement. Jewelry, martial arts cheats, magic weapons can be paid. Here, how about my Huashan school swordsmanship?" Buchan said tentatively. "Do you still have to be clever at this time?" Ryan snapped and asked, "Organ regeneration is first rate. What's the matter with you doing these tricky tricks? Since you're like this, don't blame me for finding your ancestors." Gwynplaine said, "Well." This Buchan's entire face became ugly all at once. www.mtlnovel.com. He just saw the man in front of him thundered and thought he should be a real fairy, but he really didn't expect his grandpa Feathering is immortal and familiar with the person in front of him. Now that I want to cheat, there is no drama, not to mention that this person may have some supernatural power to see that he is lying. "Dare to ask Shangxian what you like?" Buchan decided to give up all the fluke and lay down. At this time, Ryan felt that it was enough to put pressure on him. After all, most of the bad guys were killed with a stick. It was better to force him to do good things for the rest of his life. Besides, although Buchan is a hypocrite, it can also be said that he was forced out of the environment because of the ruined Huashan school, whose nature is not bad and hopeless. So Ryan said, want to solve your problems depends on how much chips you can put out. On the other hand, how much merit you have. Because you used to calculate too much, you also did too much in the case of bad things. Many. I don't see much merit in you, but the life and death human bone spell needs merit. So even if all your martial arts add up, the chips are enough. But your merit is not enough. I can only help you solve half. Why? What? Buchan exclaimed with a sharp voice. All the martial arts of my Huashan mountain are just barely enough. Ryan used his hand to draw out a flash of lightning. The ancestry left by Gwingningsai is not bad, but that is also the mortal ancestry of his mortal ancestry. It is still too far compared to my fairy lore. Okay, just like that, half is half. Buchan thought for a moment and said helplessly, please look at the way our ancestors and give us a way of life for the Huashan school. Chapter 177, Uninvited Guest. Ryan has nothing to say about Buchan's fact that he is playing a snake with a stick. He is curious and asked, don't you ask what happened to save half? Don't ask. I believe Shanxian can arrange it. Besides, my situation will not be worse than it is now. Since I cut it, I'm worried every day. I am afraid that one day I will be found much better. It seems that after the successive blows, Buchan looked away completely. Now that he's in this position, Ryan won't turn around. He directly took out a contract and said, I signed this thing and I started to do it. Everything is on this paper. Buchan took the contract and looked at it, only to see that he needed to teach all the martial arts he had learned to the shopkeeper, and the shopkeeper promised that he would not pass on these martial arts in his world. The corresponding shop owner is responsible for regenerating his lost organs, but the regenerating organs can only restore his body to its original state, and will not have any practical effect otherwise. In other words, the restored organs can restore Buchan's voice and beard, and the feminine state of the body also disappears, but the most important functions are removed. It's much better than I thought. After all, the children are so old. I don't think about having a son again. Buchan shook his head and signed on the contract. 35 XS. After seeing Buchan signing the contract, Ryan's mind sounded the voice of the Wanji grocery store. Has acquired Huashan Chenquan, Huashan swordsmanship, Huashan inner skill, Yangwu swordsmanship, Xi swordsmanship, Tai Ayu San Kingfing, 19 swords of the Jade Girl, Zixia divine skills, evil sword spells. A blue gas flew from Buchan and turned into 9 books on the shelf. Seeing things get in hand, Ryan also relaxed. He said to Buchan, who was bound by the vines, to fully restore your ability is indeed barely possible, but the problem is that once you restore the evil swordsmanship you practiced, it will be useless. I think you must be unwilling. If you want the best of both worlds, your merits are far from enough. Since you want me to show you a way of life for Huashan, I think martial arts are absolutely useless. Then you can only make you pay something. After signing the contract, Buchan also understood the rules of the Wanji grocery store, and knew that once the contract was signed, both parties could not rely on their debts, and their hearts were put down for the most part. So after hearing Ryan explain that the complete restoration will abolish the evil swordsmanship, he quickly said, just follow the plan you put forward. In order to carry forward the Huashan distribution, I will sacrifice it. Ryan can't figure out whether Buchan is really telling the truth or the scene. But it doesn't matter what he says at this time. After thinking of coming to this treatment, he should take Ryan's warning seriously, and now that the hardware defect of Buchan has been completely removed, maybe he will not be psychopathic as in the original story. Thinking of here, Ryan instructed Xiaoqing to tie up Buchan more tightly, and then took out the therapeutic needle obtained in the radiation and made 2 shots. After the fight, Buchan didn't move much. After a while, he suddenly began to tremble, trying to scratch the part that was growing again. Fortunately, Ryan had prepared in advance to let Xiaoqing tie up Buchan before he let him scratch it, but he could still hear the crunching sound on the vines. The curious Ryan asked Xiaoqing what happened now, and Xiaoqing's feedback was surprising because he could feel that the strength of Lu's struggle was several tons. Is this the effect of internal force? Ryan looked forward to the harvest this time. 10 minutes later, the crunch finally stopped, and Ryan signaled Xiaoqing to put Buchan down. At this time, Buchan was already like gold paper, sweating like pulp. The whole body is the same as the one just pulled out of the water. But he was still very excited, regardless of Ryan still standing in front of him and directly touching his hand. When he touched the lost thing, he shouted happily, I have it again, I have it again. Afterwards, Buchan turned down and bowed down. Before I went down, I didn't know the true immortals, and there were many collisions. However, Daxian still ignored the former suspects to rejuvenate, cultivate more merits. I think that the previous thing is atonement. It's so good. Ryan gestured to the group and said, if you have anything to do, you can meditate on Wanji grocery store in the future, and then find any door to open and you can come to me. As long as I see your merit growth the sin karma does not increase. Then you can take your things and exchange them. After that, Ryan showed him all the items in the store. Carefully follow the order of immortals. After reading these goods, which were regarded as a magic weapon of the immortal family in his eyes. Buchan walked in front of Ryan and then arranged his clothes, then said, "Yuma will return to the ordinary after some time. We'll definitely visit again in the future." After that, Buchan walked out of the shop and left. 1G grocery store also received information to detect changes in the world's fate, gaining 28 deviation points. The harvest this time is not bad. It seems that Buchan has a great mental impact after being cut. No. His IQ is estimated to be online again after he grows up. www.mtlnovel.com. Such a terrible ending. Thinking of here, Ryan came to the shelf and started to watch a few new martial arts secrets. Looking at him, he suddenly found that the internal force mentioned in the martial arts cheats is very close to the spiritual force he practiced, so he tried to carry his spiritual force in the body according to the method of Hua Shan's internal skill. After the spiritual power was poured into the arm in accordance with the inner power mental movement, Ryan raised the counter beside him. The counter seemed to be much lighter, and he lifted it with one hand as soon as he pressed hard. It seems that the spiritual power and the internal power have something in common. I think that Ryan chose to infuse all the martial arts except the evil sword here. Hua Shan Chenquan, Hua Shan swordsmanship, and Hua Shan inner skills have only one offset point per foundation. Yang Wu swordsmanship, Xi swordsmanship, Tai Ayu San King Thing, Jade Girl 19 swords are complex points, each with 3 offset points. The highest is Zixia divine skill, which requires 7 points. Why does it feel a little cheap? Ryan thought of letting the system infuse himself. After a light infusion ended, he looked at the system's message and found that whether it is martial arts or internal work, it is actually a method of using internal force, and spiritual force can completely replace internal force. So perfusion is just to make the body familiar with the method of carrying spiritual power in the meridians. No wonder it is so cheap, because the energy level of spiritual power is higher than internal power. So sometimes spiritual power can replace internal power to do what internal power needs to do, but the reverse is absolutely impossible. In addition, the spiritual power of Ryan, like these martial arts, belongs to the Taoist line. So it can perfectly use the spiritual force to urge these martial arts. After figuring out all this, Ryan felt that this time the guest received was quite worthwhile. After learning a lot of martial arts, he also made a net 6 offset points. Chapter 178, Misfortune. Ryan returned to the dormitory is very excited. Although martial arts is not very useful in this world. 35XS is always a long-range magical bombardment in the Battle of the Wizards, and the Phantom Manifestation allows the wizards to maneuver full points in the battle, and the internal defense has little effect on magic. So for close combat, the skills in the Assassin's Heritage are sufficient. Martial arts is at best a icing on the cake for him, but not all martial arts are of low value to Ryan. For example, Zixia Divine Skill is a huge gain. It can make people's eyes and ears more sensitive, and their hearing and vision can be far, which can detect the situation in a distance without touching the magic in many places where there is magic detection. At the same time, it can also protect the body and greatly strengthen the physical defense. In addition to the increase in human body strength, agility, attack and other internal strength routine features are also available. And this harvest has greatly improved the survival ability of Lane, which is a very valuable asset for Lane, who is a little afraid of death. After the transaction ended, Ryan did not look for new powers for a while, but he had been running in the powers he had mastered. Finally, 10 days before Christmas, the field practice course for Hogwarts students began. The location of this course is an ancient aboriginal ruin 70 kilometers away. Castro Bruzio built an artificial ecosphere on the basis of the remaining magic circle in that ruin and took that artificial ecosphere as a field practice course venue. The day before departure, Ryan had some uneasiness. After all, according to the information received before, this trip may be accompanied by a conspiracy of the former saints. As he was going to return to the dormitory to pick up things after finishing the afternoon class, the man in the hallway suddenly heard the voice of Principal Fernando coming next to him. Ryan quickly made an excuse to say goodbye to Hermione next to him, then turned left and followed the voice to a nobody corridor. Pushing open the wooden door at the end of the corridor, Lane saw Principal Fernando sitting at a table, and beside him was the owner of the small shop in the Mahogany Town, the former Saint's Zelzner. "What needs to happen to call me now? Didn't you say that Chimera will attack when I travel tomorrow? We shouldn't be contacted at this time, especially in places like the school where there are many people. We don't want to, but the situation is not right now," Skulzen said. Today the Brazilian Ministry of Magic suddenly received so-called reliable information stating that the local blood gods are going to attack you, so today they began to mobilize arrows and strikers to the artificial ecosystem you are going to prepare for to ambush the enemy. Wait for the blood religion? Are we not talking about the Chimera Society in the former Saint organization? Ryan asked with question. Blood gods are the descendants of the group of black wizards who like blood sacrifices and blood magic suppressed by our ancestors. After being hit by our ancestors, they were transferred to the dark place. Now they are the most powerful black wizard organization in the local area. The local black wizards who cooperated with Chimera refer to them. Principal Fernando explained. Oh, That's right. Wouldn't it be a good thing for the Ministry of Magic to clear the group of black wizards in advance? You wouldn't feel uncomfortable because you didn't avenge yourself? No, by no means. The two sitting at the table shook their heads at the same time and retorted. Then the principal said, "The problem is that this information is too strange. Even if I was to say that the Ministry of Magic just sent an ERA team to patrol. How? This time, I am out of the nest? If you know that these two organizations have been hiding in this place for more than half a century, how could they be exposed suddenly? And how many secrets are exposed in one breath?" Yeah, especially Dietrich, the leader of Chimera, was the most cunning among the young saints. In recent years, it has evolved into an old fox. Our former saints have dealt with him for nearly half. In the 21st century, there have been more losses than taking advantage. I don't think that such an important conspiracy will be so easily solved by the Ministry of Magic's group Spins, Zodzna said. So what did you call me to do today? I don't know much more than you. It's useless to tell me these things. Ryan was a little curious about the purpose of calling them over. We just want to tell you how bad the situation is now. For safety reasons, we may adjust what you practice tomorrow. But in the current bad situation, we cannot guarantee 100% safety of the night vision after adjustment. So inform in advance. You just want you to be vigilant at all times. Once you find something is wrong, immediately contact us with the brooch we gave you last time. After all, the only thing we now confirm is that your study tour is the goal of the other party, and you are the only student in the study tour that can be reached, the principal explained to Ryan at this time. Why not just cancel this event in this case? Don't tell me that you also think face is more important, so the arranged things can't be changed? Ryan asked, puzzled. Of course we want to cancel, but the problem is that you are flying in. Once you cancel your activity, what if they suddenly attack on your way back? At that time, we could not protect you from the school's protection circle. Principal rubbed his temples, and then said, so we just want to lead them directly to give them a major blow. www.mtlnovel.com fundamentally solve the problem. Did this matter tell the professor who led us? We have informed the two professors at Hogwarts College that they have promised to be vigilant at all times. But the problem is that your professors must also be the targets of their attention, and there must be a response plan, and students will relax a lot. At this time your importance is reflected, Fernando replied. Okay, I will be fully prepared tomorrow. Ryan nodded. It seems that tomorrow's event will not be so calm. The next morning, the genius was bright, and the professor's voice rang in the dormitory. Please rush all staff to the common room as soon as possible. There are important notices. When Ryan washed and came to the common room, he found everyone here. A few students looked a little uneasy, but the other students were comforting them. For example, Janku is touching the hair of a small Ravenclaw girl now. Ryan remembers that she seems to be called Alicia, a sophomore in pure blood. However, because the parents are scholars, there is no prejudice against the wizards and Muz of Mull origin. Hermione had planned to develop her into a book club before, so Ryan was a little impressed. She is a timid and introverted girl. It seems that this morning it scared her a little, so Janku is comforting her in a whisper. There are several such students. After all, this morning the situation is a bit abnormal. After all the students had arrived, they waited for a few minutes and everyone returned to normal. At this time Professor Sprout and a strange bald middle-aged wizard walked in. Chapter 179, Preparation and Departure. Student, this one next to me is Mr. David Ricardo, Director of the ERA Office of the Ministry of Magic in Brazil. He now has an urgent matter to inform us. After finishing, Professor Sprout took a step back and let Ricardo came out. The situation is urgent, so let's just talk about things now. I need each of you to provide some hair, because today a group of black wizards will attack you. However, our Ministry of Magic has intercepted the information in advance, so now we need your hair to prepare a compound soup. Let the ERAs become your ambush gangs of black wizards. After speaking, 12 test tubes were lined up on the table in front of him, filled with mud-like compound soup. People quickly put their hair into a test tube on the table as required. After everyone finished, Ricardo took the test tube and said to everyone, you don't have to worry too much. This is just a handful of troublemakers. Our Ministry of Magic will definitely solve this problem completely this time. You will be here today. At school, the school has entered a state of emergency, so it is safe here. After speaking, Ricardo turned and left the car, and through the window, Professor Kettleborn could be seen following. After all, in order to prevent the other party from finding something wrong, Hogwarts must have a teacher as part of the disguise. Therefore, Professor Kettleborn, who is more combative, will follow the ERAs in this operation. Professor Sprout said to the students after they left, because of security issues, we cannot leave the school today. So the school opened an underground in the legendary Garden Underground network system that has not been open to outsiders in history. The ecosphere serves as our learning place. I just asked Castro Brushuo, the teacher of the magical animal protection class, told us that this place is even higher in species richness and level than we originally planned. So I hope you can catch this second chance. Okay, now you can go back to your dormitory to clean up and come back here to gather in 10 minutes. Ryan feels that the situation is getting worse and worse now, because the errors get the information that it looks like a tiger away from the mountain, but thinking about the magical defense of Hogwarts Castle. He really thinks not to bleed the gods and the people of Chimera. What can be done to enter this campus that does not seem to be worse than Hogwarts in terms of defense? After all, something as precious as the disappearing cabinet cannot be everywhere. Not to mention President Fernando's assurance yesterday that he should have some precautions. Although Ryan couldn't figure out whether dark wizards would come out from the raid, for security reasons, Ryan was wearing an assassin suit in the middle of his armed forces this time. There were more than 20 small test tubes filled with various liquids on the belt and shoulder strap of the suit. A lot of potions and some spellcasting materials are also placed in the leather bag around the waist. The space bag is full of various supplies, including some equipment at the bottom of the tank. In order to facilitate Clinwise teeth and Liberator pistols, they were hung in separate sleeves on both thighs. Finally Ryan put on the Hogwarts robe and buttoned it up. Cover everything with a robe. When he went out carrying his school bag, most people were already waiting in the common room. After having breakfast in groups, the exchange students at Hogwarts walked towards the legendary garden under the leadership of Professor Sprout. As everyone walked on the road, Ryan slowly approached Hermione and whispered to her, "This is a bit wrong today. It will never be as simple as the Brazilian Ministry of Magica said. I have a hunch that I might be today." "What's wrong?" "So it's best to pay attention to the surroundings today." "Got it. I also think that the situation is indeed a bit wrong today." "Thank you for your reminder. I will remain vigilant." Hermione nodded and whispered. At the door of the legendary garden, Professor Ferdinand Gonzalez, the professor of Castro Brucio Herbs, is already waiting for you. In accordance with the habit of addressing in South America, Professor Sprout stepped forward to greet him. "Good morning, Professor Ferdinand." "We are all here, please take us over." Professor Ferdinand nodded and a kind smile appeared on his round face with a moustache. "Welcome to study in our number 3 greenhouse, because the other Bark professor originally arranged for the old Bark has something to do, so today let me guide you through the tour." After he finished, he took everyone through the sculpture at the gate of the park and followed the path in the garden to the center of the garden. The Professor Ferdinand was as enthusiastic as they were at the exchange meeting when they first arrived here, but Ryan always thought the professor was a little weird. But he recalled for a long time and found nothing wrong. After making a few turns on the road, they came to the entrance from the last time they visited the underground tunnel. After Professor Ferdinand reported his goal at the door, the stone used for disguise rolled aside, and a large 2-person hole was exposed. The mermaid penetrated the cave, and there was a layer of glowing moss and mushrooms on the wall. The blue cold light they emitted made the whole tunnel clear. www.mplnovel.com. Lane was a little nervous because he knew it was the easiest to be ambushed by people, but everything went well until they reached the door of Greenhouse 3. "Maybe I am a little nervous. After all, what the Principal Fernando told me yesterday is really terrible. It makes me feel wrong today, and I feel like there is a lot of noise in the wind," Lane thought to himself. Afterwards, Professor Ferdinand drew a complex magic symbol on the left stone wall with his wand. The symbol did not enter the stone door behind the stone wall and slowly rose upwards. "All the greenhouses we see should be large and should be directly transformed from a large underground cave. After a long time of school construction, this place has become an underground jungle. There is a big golden ball in the midair of the cave that is not burning like the sun. It seems that they are using this magic prop to provide the underground jungle with the light and heat necessary for creatures." Just as Ryan marveled at this magical prop, Professor Ferdinand came to me at the forefront shouting, "Please enter the greenhouse and walk on the stone road, because there are some dangerous creatures in the greenhouse. If you deviate from the magically protected the flagstone road is likely to cause danger." Listening to this shout, Ryan withdrew his gaze from the golden ball above his head. After lowering his head, he found that there was a stone road in front of them, which extended from the small platform after entering the door to the depths of the jungle. The design of this greenhouse is so ingenious. While Lane lamented the magic of this place, while walking along the road with the big troops to the observation point in the center of the greenhouse surrounded by jungle. Chapter 180, Sudden Change. The observation point in this greenhouse number 3 is actually just a highland overlooking most of the greenhouse. On the highland are 3 slabs carved with magical runes, and the runes radiate blue light from time to time. Those stones have a long-sighted spell. You can observe things in the distance after standing on the stone slab. Please keep order and look up one by one. Those who have no turn can move a little freely on this platform. Professor Ferdinand stood before everyone and spoke to everyone. So everyone decided to draw lots to arrange the order. Ryan was very lucky. The first batch was his turn to watch on the slate. Standing on the stone slab, he found that the slate was not simple, but it was easier to operate than the binoculars. "As soon as I stand up, I can see a screen appearing in the sky. The screen shows a distant scene, and it will change its position as the human eye turns. At the same time, as long as you move your arms, you can easily zoom in and out, much like the holographic images in science fiction movies. It seems that magic is not worse than those technologies. Because nothing went wrong, Ryan also relaxed a bit and began to observe these rare plants. This greenhouse has been carefully designed so that you can see the plants inside and some small animals forming a small ecological circle. Through the magic on these stone slabs, Ryan can see the walking grass sneaking in the shade, and some little fairies collect edible nectar and petals from a flower. Ryan constantly changes his perspective, hoping to see more things that are basically not visible outside. But when he turned to a piece of silverleaf needleweed, he saw something that made Ryan a pair of footprints on that piece of needleweed, and then zoomed in and found that the needleweed was slowly getting back up. This means that people who have stepped on their footprints may have left the tens of seconds ago. Is there an ambush? Ryan's first reaction began to observe the clusters of biodons, and it was found that the leaves of some plants were swinging unnaturally, but no shadows have been seen, and only through the changes of these plants can we roughly judge that an invisible person is slowly approach the observation point. In this case, a sneaky person who is close to him doesn't really look like a good person. Ryan remembered the headmaster's warning yesterday. But this is obviously in the school. How do they mix up? But it's useless to think too much now, because in this case there can be only one sneak attacker. But look at the closer and closer the sneak attacker is to the observation point, trying to find all the other sneak attacks before they attack. It is too late. Based on previous combat experience, the only way to survive in this situation is to disrupt the opponent's deployment. Thinking of this, Ryan ran down the stone slab, and then ran to the railing and drew his wand to draw a rune at the approximate position of the invisible man. Launching life and natural magic directly, a reconnaissance was lost. Sure enough, there was a person hiding in that place. 35XS. He originally wanted to use the advantage of stealth to get close to Ryan, but neither the phantom spell or the invisibility cloak could hide himself under such active magic investigation. The moment the Ryan's investigation spell touched him, I knew I was exposed. Obviously, there was no expectation on the opposite side that someone would use investigative magic in an open space like a sudden nerve, so he paused in action. However, it was some veterans who could mix into the school to participate in the attack, and soon issued a blood red curse to Ryan on the stage. Fortunately, the attacker paused a moment ago, allowing Ryan to successfully release the lightning attack under the cover of his wand. The wind and thunder breaks. Following Ryan's spell, a purple thunderball flew towards the attacker. The attacker was half a beat slow because of the spellcasting, and because the Ryan was a junior student, he was a little relaxed, so he didn't flash this magic. When the thunderball hit him, a barrier appeared on his body, but soon the barrier broke, and the thunderball hit him firmly. The thunderball caused the attacker to be shot directly from the invisible state, and then his body twitched and collapsed. At the same time, Ryan dodged to the side while firing the thunderball, easily avoiding the scarlet spell. A series of matches were completed in 7 or 8 seconds, so all talents reacted until the end of the match. Professor Sprout seemed to be prepared. She shouted loudly, "Everyone is close to me now, the reinforcements will be here soon." Then he took out a seed from the cloth pocket around his waist and sprinkled it on the ground. These seeds fell to the ground to take root, and soon began to form a green barrier around the platform. The barrier had just risen to half, and I saw several magic hits on the barrier. Fortunately, the barrier just shook and did not break open. Looking in the direction of those magical launches, more than a dozen wizards came out of invisibility. Half of them wore blood-colored robes, while the other half wore all kinds of clothes. Is this the joint attack of the Blood and Chimera? But where is the reinforcement that President Fernando promised now? He had previously said that he would lead this group out and siege it in one fell swoop. Now people are drawn, but what about them? While Ryan was thinking about this issue, a few holes suddenly appeared on the top of the hole. Ryan saw Principal Fernando and the former saint, Zodzna, coming from the sky with a dozen people. When the attacker had not responded, he fell around the attacker. www.mtlnovel.com. As soon as he landed, SCO Erzner aimed at the little guy in a magnificent magic robe that led the attackers and fired a silver spell, then shouted provocatively, "Hey, Dietrich, you are finally willing to take you're the group of men crawled out of the mouse hole? Ha! I haven't seen you for so long. What other tricks do you have on your lips? My little pet misses the taste of your group of guys," said Dietrich. Swiped his wand to block the spell shot at him. Then he raised his wand and shouted, "Come out, my little cuties. Let them taste your strength." As the shout fell, several pieces of ground suddenly shook, and then 7 or 8 monsters drilled out of the ground, and each monster had traces of splicing. For example, a giant ape with 6 arms, a spider with a lower body, but 3 monsters with fire-breathing heads on it. The most exaggerated is a chimera that is about the size of a basketball court. Ice, fire and poison gas exploded and they attacked the Principal Fernando. But President Fernando and the helpers he brought were not weak, and soon their heads of magic wands spewed out colorful lights, which were comparable to those monsters and attackers. Naturally, in this case the magic they fired on Ryan was much less, and everyone under the protection of Professor Sprout was finally able to take a breath. But now there is an important question: how did so many monsters and attackers get to the school? Ryan thought more and more that the situation was wrong, and there was a voice in his heart telling him that the enemies who could make such a big scene must have a backhand, and it could not be just such an ambush. Chapter 181, Metamorphosis. Elbow and armpit. The number of assaults far exceeded Ryan's imagination, and he felt that this could not be explained by secret infiltration. After all the possibilities have been eliminated, the only possibility is that there is a traitor in Katuro Bruzuo. Thinking of traitor, Ryan felt like he had forgotten something. After closing his eyes and meditating for a while, he suddenly opened his eyes and there was a problem with Professor Ferdinand. Whether the people here are Professor Sprout or the classmates because they have been together for a long time, Ryan did not think that anyone was abnormal. Only Professor Ferdinand, despite his good manners, seemed to be normal in every move, and even the habit of touching the moustache from time to time was not much different from what he saw before the semester. But in every move, this Professor Ferdinand always had an unnatural deliberate sense. That's why Ryan felt a little wrong on the road, but couldn't tell what was wrong. After all, this situation can only be felt if there is a problem with Ferdinand, and speculation can be made with the greatest maliciousness. According to the conspiracy theory, this Ferdinand professor is likely to be a product after someone drinks the compound soup. According to the fact that he can easily answer the questions of Hogwarts students in fluent English along the way, this pretender should be a wizard with a higher academic education, and since he can be sent in to break into the interior, then it is the backbone member of the other party. After such a screening, it is estimated that it may only be a member of the former Saint of Chimera. Thinking of Ryan holding a wand in his sleeve, he slowly approached Professor Ferdinand. Professor Ferdinand was surrounded by several students, and the professor was comforting them. Ryan walked over to Ferdinand, taking advantage of the gap between several students asking questions, and said, "I heard that this time we ambushed an organization called Chimera. I wonder if you have heard of it?" "I naturally." Speaking of this, Professor Ferdinand's face changed suddenly, because he only realized when his words were spoken, Ryan just asked him questions in German. The real Professor Ferdinand is not German. After confirming the identity of the other party, Ryan had just raised his wand to give the fake professor a coma mantra ready to catch him and torture some questions. A large 6th grade Slytherin boy next to Ryan who saw Ryan holding up his wand suddenly grabbed Ryan's right arm and moved to the side, mouth shouting, "What are you going to do to the professor? Oh my god, how can there be a pig teammate at this time?" Ryan is very eager to get rid of this chaotic guy. Because of his interruption, his first move has been lost, and things are sliding to more troublesome places. Sure enough, when it was found that he could no longer lurch, the fake Professor Ferdinand suddenly showed a terrible face and reached out to grab the second-year Ravenclaw girl Alicia, who was closest to him, in an attempt to hijack the hostage. 35XS. At this time, Hermione suddenly rushed from the side and slammed Alicia to the side. As a result, she tripped under her feet and was caught by the counterfeit. Isn't this chaos? Ryan feels that things are completely out of his plan now. As soon as he was about to do something, he saw the counterfeit throw the wand in Hermione's hand aside. Then he raised a magic wand in response to Professor Sprout and threw a small ball. The ball quickly sprayed a dark green smoke. When it landed under the cover of smoke, the counterfeit knocked the ground with a wand, and a hole with a diameter of more than 1 meter was exposed on the ground. He took Hermione directly and jumped out of the hole. He contracted as soon as he jumped down the hole, and everyone else was so confused by the smoke that he didn't even notice the scene. Ryan had already thrown away the big piece of Slytherin at this time, and jumped down immediately after seeing the slowly closing hole. The bottom of the hole was very dark, and Ryan could only feel the wind blowing through his ears. Suddenly, he heard a sound of falling water. It seemed that there was a water surface underneath. Thinking of Ryan adjusting his posture here and falling towards the place where he had just made a sound. Boom. Wow. With a crash, Ryan felt that he had fallen into a pond. The water temperature here was very low, and he shivered involuntarily. Just as he was about to rise to the surface to start searching, he suddenly stretched out his hands and strangled Ryan's neck. Ryan could feel the webbed fingers on his neck. This is a transformation of the human body. It seems that this group of Chimera madmen dare to poison themselves, which is no worse than Voldemort's courageous guy who has no nose. But obviously, this kind of transformation is very conducive to fighting in the water. Soon he grabbed Ryan's hand holding his wand, then the other hand pressed Ryan's head into the water desperately. Ryan tried to punch him a few times and found that he had stiff and slippery fish scales and couldn't work at all. If Ryan is an ordinary wizard, he will definitely suffer a great deal. After all, when the hand holding the wand is controlled, the ordinary wizard will lose his combat ability. But Ryan is different from most ordinary wizards. He has his own backhand, at least after mastering the Zixia magical skill. He can hold his breath in the water for 7 or 8 minutes without any problem. www.mtlnovel.com. The slower and the counterfeit also relaxed his vigilance as Ryan's resistance became smaller and smaller. Soon Ryan's body movements stopped slowly. After seeing this situation, the Chimera gangster passed through his hands under Ryan's armpit, and then swam to the surface of the water. It seems that he wanted to move him to a shore. Ryan took advantage of this opportunity to transport Zixia's magical power, and then grasped the arm of the opponent under the arm while the strength of his arms increased greatly, and at the same time pulled the arm of the sleeved sword on his wrist. The sleeve sword on both arms was ejected, and then Ryan struggled to stab the sleeve sword back and up. Fortunately, he learned martial arts before. With the help of Zixia divine skill, he could bend his wrist into a normal one. People can't bend the angle, so that the sword in his hand can pierce the opponent's key point. The counterfeit also felt dangerous. He tried to distance himself from Ryan, but he couldn't dodge with his arms caught between Ryan. The enchanted sword easily pierced the fish scales on the counterfeit goods, and then when Ryan felt that the sword was deep into the body, he twisted his wrist and twisted hard. Wizards may be much stronger than Muz in terms of individual abilities, but most wizards are as weak as moles. Although the fake behind him changed his body with magic like Voldemort, he did not change it completely like Voldemort. The internal organs protected by fish scales are still as vulnerable as ordinary people. Soon, the counterfeit goods that hit the liver and spleen hardly stopped, and then slowly drifted towards the water. And Ryan followed suit to see what was happening now. Chapter 182, What is this place? With a clatter, a black shadow emerged from the pool. In a cave. After killing his opponent, Ryan finally surfaced. After surfacing, Lane first looked around and found that this was the bottom of the tanking. There was some blue moss growing on the surrounding stone walls, so he could vaguely see the surrounding conditions. Ryan looked around for a week and saw a figure lying on the water motionless 5 or 6 meters away. Hermione! Ryan exclaimed, and immediately swam towards the figure. After swimming to the shadow, Ryan discovered that there was a bubble spell on Hermione's head, which made Ryan slightly relieved. Then he pulled the attacker and Hermione together to the only shoal where he had just seen the pool. After a brief examination, Ryan found that Hermione had nothing to do but just passed out. This should be the first time the attacker stunned Hermione and gave her a bubble charm. Then she was put aside in the water to ambush Ryan in order to grab 2 hostages at once. Judging from this hand, the attacker should be a skilled veteran. First let a hostage completely incapacitated and set aside to avoid obstruction, and then use his advantages to ambush another opponent in the water. It's just that he didn't expect the junior student to be so close to melee combat, and he also had good equipment. The result was planted in Ryan's hands. Since Hermione was fine, Ryan put her aside first. After all, he was going to ask the attackers for something, and he might take some unsuitable means. In this case, it is better not to let Hermione see it. Ryan first used magic to activate the leaf brooch given by the previous principal and tried to contact the principal, but the result was unexpectedly invalid. The brooch is just as unresponsive as an ordinary jewelry. It seems there is magic that can suppress these communication tools. But then again, it seems that in the movies he has seen before, it seems that the key moments can't reach people. This may be an inevitable event. It seems that I can only rely on myself. Thinking of Ryan shaking his head here, he walked over to the attacker. He found that the attacker did not look like a person at this time. He had turned green from head to toe, exposing the limbs covered with scales, and shark-like gills on his neck. But the scary thing is that the wound around his waist is no longer bleeding, and granulation has grown on the wound. These granulations continue to wriggle, trying to block the wound. God, what is this? Ryan thought that he had pried open the mouth of the other party to prepare the medicine, but unexpectedly discovered that the teeth in his mouth had become as sharp as a razor. The change in this person gave Ryan an ominous feeling, so he put down the medicine bottle and called Xiaoqing from the grocery store. He waited for Xiaoqing to tie up this guy before pouring the healing potion on the other party. Less than 10 seconds after pouring the potion, his eyes opened violently and struggled hard, and at the same time a beast roared from his mouth. Ryan saw only violent and bloodthirsty from his eyes, which belonged to human wisdom completely disappeared. Is this out of control? Ryan thought. After all, he saw that Slytherin left the human body transformation materials and repeatedly suggested that adding other biological parts to the human body is very easy to cause out of control. All the performances of this man in front of him perfectly fit the out of control described by Slytherin after the situation. It seems that this man was not saved, and he could not ask anything, and now he can only take a backup plan. Ryan pulled Clinway's teeth from the scabbard of his thigh, and then poured his arms into his arms to cut off the head of the monster who had turned into a monster in front of him. It seems that the Battle of the Radiating World gives people a lot of experience. At least the hand that cuts the head is much cleaner than the executioner who cut Nick's head. While thinking about these messy things, Ryan cut a strip of cloth from the other party's clothes and dipped the other party's green blood into a magic circle on the ground. When the magic circle was finished, Ryan put this head in the center of the magic circle, and then pressed the magic circle with both hands to inject magic power into it. This is a part of soul magic about life. You can extract the soul of the person who just died and read the content in the soul. The only problem is that this kind of torture is one time, and it requires magic users to have enough soul strength to find the parts they need from a large number of memories. With the injection of magic, a lot of memory fragments quickly rushed to Ryan's mind along his arms. Ryan quickly transported Moshan Dao Fa Bao Yuan Shui, and then slowly began to sort out these memory fragments. 7 or 8 minutes later, Ryan exhaled with long hands and left the magic circle. A blue flame suddenly ignited from the array, burning everything in the magic array to ashes. Because of the mutation that occurred before, His soul has suffered serious problems. When Ryan used life magic to check his memory, he only saw some fragmentary memories, most of which were meaningless fragments of life scenes. Fortunately, Ryan finally found a part of this fragmentary memory and this underground space-related stuff. This underground space is not newly excavated as Ryan imagined, but an ancient ruin. The Castro Bruce School was built on the ruins long after the ruins were abandoned, but the school's previous teachers and students did not find this place. It's no wonder, after all, this piece of land is filled with demon stone fragments, so unless you directly dig a cave that is connected to this ancient ruin, otherwise you can never check out the ruins by magic inspection. At the same time, the ruins are buried deep. Schools that only seek and excavate space in the shallow layer naturally cannot find the ruins. As for why the school is built on the ruins, it is entirely because even the wizards are magical, but they are also human. Therefore, when choosing the location of the settlement, like those Muzz without magic, they tend to choose places that are safe, convenient, and full of various resources. Especially in the early days when the Flyway network was not popular. www.mplnovel.com. The wizards would choose a place near the river as a settlement to facilitate the circulation of materials and people. Especially in places like schools with large populations, they may need to obtain some basic daily necessities from the Mole world, such as food, cloth and furniture. Then the river naturally became their best transportation line. In addition to this, school construction also requires sufficient space and absolute safety. All these conditions add up to meet the requirements. In the plain area may be easier to find, but in the wild Amazon rainforest can meet these requirements at the same time. Not many places. In this case, it is easy to understand that the school was built on this forgotten relic. It's like the fact that many historic cities in Ryan's last life often excavated various cultural relics from the ground. It was just this time that the ruins hidden under the ground were not found in the school, but the enemies of the school discovered and used the ruins. According to what Ryan found from the memory of the fake Professor Ferdinand, there are at least 3 tunnels that can lead from the ruins to the underground network under the school garden. I want to come to the monsters to enter the school through one of the tunnels. As a member of the Chimera Society, not much is known about this relic that originally belonged to the Blood God. From today's incident, Ryan remembered that in the story, he was first mixed in with Sirius, then raided by Death Eaters, and finally led by Voldemort to attack the successful Hogwarts castle. He felt that it might be a curse, that every place claimed to be the safest would always be attacked successfully. This is true of the Machino line and the Iogema of Mole World, as well as the schools of wizards. Chapter 183, Unexpected Remains. Hermione felt like she was in an endless darkness now. Am I dead? She began to recall what happened today. From the morning when the person from the Ministry of Magic of Brazil came to notice, everything became strange today. When he saw the professor trying to hold someone else, he subconsciously stepped forward to save people. As a result, the professor strangled his neck and jumped into a hole. The last memory is that when the professor fell, she fired a magic to hit her, and then she fell into this endless darkness. Woo, Dad, Mom, I still have so many things that I haven't experienced, and I haven't read so many books. Woo. Just when Hermione was sad, she suddenly heard a familiar voice. It's okay for me to recover this spell quickly. Why haven't I woke up yet? Obviously I just got a coma spell. After hearing Ryan's words, Hermione thought she was thinking that the mess was really shameful, so she quickly opened it. You finally woke up. Ryan took a breath. I thought I was wrong. What do you think of it now? Well, everything is okay. Hermione moved her eyeballs when she finished, seeing Ryan half kneeling beside her, putting away her wand. What is this place? As far as I know, this should be an ancient ruin under Castro Brusho. The fake professor and the attackers just infiltrated into the school from this ruin. Professor of counterfeit goods? Hermione exclaimed. Right, where is the other person now? Will you not hide where to prepare to attack us? After she finished, she sat up and looked around with caution. Relax, he has just dived and escaped. Ryan made up a lie that didn't change his face. After all, he couldn't tell a 13-year-old girl that he had just chopped down the head of the kidnapper and burned it to ash. His robe was filled with stones and tied to the body and sank into the pool. Hermione breathed a sigh of relief when she heard Ryan's words, and then blushed abruptly. No, I am so sorry to keep you here because of me. I am sorry. I just want to know that I have clearly reminded you to pay attention today. Why do you automatically send the door to let that guy take you as a hostage? Ryan asked, a little puzzled. After all, Hermione was away from the guy at that time. Not close. It is reasonable to say that Hermione cannot be caught. I don't know why Hermione rushed up to see Yoshio to push away the guy's original goal. Aren't you asking me to pay attention today? So I noticed you and the person when you started talking. Then the person suddenly grabbed Alicia with a stern look. I just pushed her subconsciously open, but I didn't notice that I stumbled under my foot before being caught by that person. It was actually a question reminded before. If I knew it, I wouldn't have caused it without reminding Hermione. But Hermione's reaction at the time was also understandable. After all, many people who were brave enough to save people were just subconscious actions when saving people, and they didn't think about anything at all. Okay, I think we have to leave here quickly. Professor Sprout and his classmates are fighting for a while and we can't take care of us. You just said that many enemies came out of here. In case someone came to see what? I don't think we two can hold the adult wizard. Hermione climbed up with her hands and said to Ryan, it is indeed time to change the place. This place is too small. Once there are people from Chimera or the Blood Gods coming here, there is no place to hide. So you have to leave here quickly, not to mention that the tunnels are alive in that person's memory, and after a period of time, they will move to crush people outside several safe areas, and their current location is not safe area. Thinking of here, Ryan immediately acted, and opened a bunch of hanging glowing plants at the end of the shoal according to what was remembered, and a black hole was exposed in front of the two. You take this self-defense first. Ryan finished and took a wand out of her arms and handed it to Hermione. After all, Hermione's wand was just thrown on it by the guy. Where did this come from? Hermione asked curiously. This is the one's wand just now. When I was in the water, I knocked out his wand. Otherwise you thought why he was running away. Ryan went on to write his nonsense. Actually, this wand was obtained by his habitual search before he was thrown away. I have to say that Xiaoking's body search level is getting stronger and stronger. In addition, he also searched out a tin pot of freshly prepared compound soup and 7 or 8 gallons. These things were temporarily thrown into his grocery store because they were not needed. The two entered the hole and walked along the winding path for 7 or 8 minutes. Ryan felt something was wrong. The knowledge of Edward Kenway that he received earlier has a lot of memories of high-altitude unsafe bungee, so he is very experienced in high-altitude bungee jumping. So when he just jumped off, he roughly calculated the height and judged that his position should be on the same plane as the river. But now that he has walked so far, and it is basically a straight line, if there is no problem, he should walk on the river from under the high ground where the school is. Can illuminate the road ahead. There must be something wrong with it. When Ryan was thinking about it, he found the sharp turn ahead, and the safety zone in the man's memory was here. After turning the corner, he was stunned by the scene in front of him. There are countless ways to hide the space in the magic world. For example, a street as big as Diagon Alley has never been discovered by Muzz eyelids. It is normal for you to read books www.uukanzu.com. Yes, after all, there is a convention in the wizarding world. The more powerful the things that have been handed down from ancient times. Think about it too. You can say that something that can be eroded for a long time is not powerful and no one believes it. Not to mention the degree of confidentiality of the wizard's own knowledge. It is likely that you have found this thing to be left by a school of wizards that has been completely lost and unknown to outsiders. The magical knowledge contained in it may be no less than the level of those mainstream wizard schools. Therefore, although Ryan despised the wizarding world's style of digging graves and archaeological knowledge similar to the mechanical theology, he also had to admit that the ancient wizards did have their strengths. It's just that Ryan has seen more than he expected, because now he is showing a huge space in front of him, and this space is occupied by a giant Mayan-style pyramid temple more than 1,000 meters high. Hermione was a little surprised to see Ryan stop there, so she turned around and came to Ryan's back. She was about to take a photo of Ryan's shoulder and saw the giant pyramid. She was immediately shocked by the Grand Pyramid. You know that she had just been to France during the summer vacation, and she once lamented the height of the Eiffel Tower. So when faced with a spectacle that is much older than the Eiffel Tower and 3 times the height of the Eiffel Tower, he was as surprised as Ryan. At this time, Ryan's face suddenly became ugly, because after seeing the temple, he found that the headquarters of the Blood in the Road to the Ground in the memory are in this temple, and the location of the temple. This is the safety zone. Chapter 184, Temple Adventure. As we all know, space folding in the wizarding world is a technology that is not low in popularity. 35XS is like Mr. Weasley's car, and then the space bag on Ryan's body. But the builder of this temple in front of him is the real Kettleman. He built this huge temple directly into the folding space, which may be why the school has not found this for so many years. In Ryan's perception, this space is a bit like the Emerald Dream. Perhaps it is Aunt Betty Ma who said that some powerful wizards can directly cut the space from the Emerald Dream and visualize it in the real world, but Ryan had never thought that someone could visualize a space as big as a mountain. It's not a good idea to stand at the entrance of a passageway, especially when you don't know when this passageway will come to life to crush people in it. So Ryan and Hermione quickly came out of the cave and came to the temple to the square. The square is not large compared to the temple, but the area is close to a standard football field. The whole square was covered with a vermilion rock and looked like a sea of blood. A small road leading directly to the entrance of the pyramid temple divided the square inches half, and dense totem poles were erected on both sides of the road. Each totem pole is sculpted with a kind of creature. Some of them have been seen in textbooks, but some of them have never been seen before. 35XS walking on the road, Ryan could feel the magic from the totem pole, but as shown in the memory fragments received before, the Blood in Chimera found that it was only half a year before they could study the role of the totem pole, so they can smoothly follow the path through the totem pole group to the front of the pyramid. As we approached the pyramid, The pattern on this building slowly became clear. It can be seen that the tombs of various monsters are embossed on the entire pyramid, and a huge monster is carved at the entrance. The monstrous large mouth is the gate of the pyramid temple, and the row of pillars supporting the porch looks just like the sharp teeth of a monster. The whole door gave a terrible feeling. "Follow me." Ryan took a deep breath and turned to Hermione behind him. Hermione nodded and clenched her wand in her hand when she heard it. Ryan did not walk into the main road in the porch facing the door at this time, but walked through the porch to the left for a short while and came under the sculpture of a monster, took out his wand and beat the monster at a specific rhythm. Rout paw. After the beating, the monster's claws suddenly opened to reveal a hole with a diameter of more than 1 meter, and a wooden ladder could be seen descending from the hole. This is the most valuable thing that Lane found in the pile of memories. This road is a road that leads directly to the location of the headquarters of the Blood God, but there are many guards and various traps along the way. 35XS Lane feels that there is no way for him to break through with a person. But the huge pyramids like this mountain have dense passages like spider webs. Neither the Blood Gods nor Chimera have the energy to clean up every passage. In his memory, this fake professor once glanced at the map on the stone wall, and he remembered this passage that had never been cleaned up and led to the central hall of the temple where the headquarters of the religious church was located. In the record, this road is called the Servant Channel. The only problem is that the map itself has some defects, and there is a section in the middle of this passage on the stone map that can't be seen because of severe weathering. However, compared to just taking a burden on the front and just hitting the way, Ryan is still willing to take this unknown risk. After giving himself and Hermione a head curse, Lane and the two of them descended the ladder into the passage. They just came down to the ground, and the monster sculpture on the top put their claws down to cover the hole, and everything was immersed in the darkness. Ryan first let Xiaoqing in his pocket crawl to the front to explore the way. Then he heard a rapid breathing sound behind him at this time. It seems that darkness has brought a lot of psychological pressure to people. Fluorescent flashing, Ryan lit his wand, and then handed the wand to the left and right hand to pick up Clinwy's teeth. After all, the magic weapon that Viking inherits, Clinwy's teeth, is more suitable than magic wands for releasing the various spells in the inheritance. Relax. As far as I know, this road is the safest in the temple. You just have to follow me, Ryan whispered, comforting Hermione, who was nervous behind him. What gave him this confidence was the Hawkeye technique obtained last summer. Because I chose the modified version of the Eagle Eye technique at that time, so after acquiring natural magic and doing some research on the magic rune, Lane spent some effort to improve his Eagle Eye technique. Now after launching Hawkeye, he can feel the subtle magic induction in the surrounding environment, and then find some traps or treasures related to magic. This made him have to be thankful that he did not choose genetic modification at the time. He did not understand the principle at all, but chose the magic version, which is almost, but he can understand it through research, and can follow his overall strength, and the level of knowledge is upgraded to upgrade skills. www.mplnovel.com. With the help of Hawkeye, Lane can see that the road under his feet is only a sidewalk in this temple, but there are still many magic traps. According to dissipation, the magic energy that comes out can determine that some of these traps are still running at least today. But it may be because this path was used by servants with low strength in the past, so the trap level inside is not high, and it is easy to be discovered and bypassed by Ryan. The only difficulty is that as a servant channel, it is naturally at the bottom of the construction priority. Therefore, when walking, the whole passage goes from left to right, and then suddenly goes up and down, and sometimes even drills through some small caves. After all, the original user of this passage is the lowest person in the temple, so he has to make way for basically all other passages in the whole temple. In the process of rushing to the road, Xiaoqing helped a lot. In many places, it was first investigated and confirmed that there was no danger before Ryan and they walked over. Lane also found several rooms on the road, but unfortunately, from what remains in these rooms, it can be seen that in the past they were either debris warehouses or servants' residences, and there were only some weathered and worn furniture and corn stalks that had been completely blackened. It is estimated that when a mouse came, he could cry out with tears for 10 minutes or so, before Ryan and they were almost driven crazy by these small, dark and sultry passages. Ryan finally received the message sent back by Xiaoqing in front. It is now in a relatively spacious space, but there is no way to find ahead. It seems that this is the weathered part of the map, at least finally able to come out of this tunnel. Lane thought about speeding up his pace. Chapter 185, Under Temple Expedition. After getting the results of Xiaoqing's investigation, Lane took a few steps and then turned a corner. An extremely spacious room made of large square stones appeared in front of them. Stepping into this room, Ryan could feel the cool breeze blowing on his body, and the heat that had just been in the tunnel was blown away at once. It seems that there is a vent in this place, and I thought. Ryan started to look around. At this time, Hermione also came out of the back hole, and the spirit of the vent was immediately lifted by the cool wind of the vent. After looking around, Hermione asked curiously, "Isn't it that there will always be a lot of things waiting for you after a long path in the adventure? Why is there nothing here?" "The adventure novels written by my dad are artistically processed. How can there be so many treasures in reality? Besides, There is only one servant channel here, and it is rather strange to have good things. After all, the nervousness was just in the channel after walking for so long. Lane also wanted to speak to relieve his mental fatigue. Wait. Ryan saw something suddenly. You're not completely wrong. I think I found some babies. At this time, Ryan walked to a stone basin in the middle of the stone room and pointed at the thing in the stone basin. What's this? Hermione stepped forward to take a look, and even if there was an odor of the bubblehead curse, she rushed straight to her nose and made her quickly back away. This is the cheapest and £60 good thing, and I haven't seen it in Diagon. It's in stock. 35 excess, Ryan said, while blocking Hermione's line of sight from all groceries with his body. A 5-liter oil barrel was pulled out of the shop. Then fill the tub with yellow and white ointment in the tub. Wait, I seem to have read this thing in the book. Hermione thought after hearing Ryan's narration and said, is this the oil that demonizes the anaconda? The book says that adding some of the anaconda's oil as a fuel when brewing some potions can greatly improve the success rate of the potions. It's worthy of knowing everything. Ryan was a little surprised by Hermione's scope, because it was a very partial knowledge. If I don't see this thing in a book occasionally, I can't guess what it is. You are right. I just found out that this should be 200 gallons a pound, because the longer this oil ages, the better the effect. The pot in front of us has aged for at least 1,000 years, and it has changed from milky white to light yellow. So it's not bad for us to fall this time. At least, even if the contents of this pot have evaporated more than half, the rest can sell at least 300 gallons. Hermione did not show much excitement after listening to Ryan. After all, it was difficult to make people happy in this dangerous place, even if they had a lot of good things this time. After putting most of the demonized oil into the oil drum, Ryan put away the oil drum and used a cup to pour the remaining oil into the 2 grooves on the wall in front of him. Then fired Mars with a magic wand and lit it. Oil in the groove. 35 excess. The turquoise flame slowly burned in the groove, and as the flame burned, a faint fragrance filled the whole house. At the same time, the wall slowly rose upwards to reveal the passage behind. How did you find this institution? Hermione asked with some curiosity. You don't see anything but the stone basin in the whole house. There are only 2 grooves on the opposite wall. There are some black burn marks on the grooves. Take a look at the precious fuel in the stone basin. This institution, how to open it is obvious. After all, it is just a passage for daily servants, and it is impossible to set up various complicated organs like the treasure chest. It was said that Ryan took the lead into the passage. This passage should lead to a more important place, so there are a large number of reliefs on both sides. While watching these reliefs, he walked forward, feeling that he was quite Indiana at this time. Jones feels adventure. As we all know, archaeology has made tremendous contributions to human understanding of ancient history, especially in the magical world. Sometimes archaeology digs out things that even represent advanced productivity. But in any case, for some owners who have been in the ancient ruins all year round, whether they are mugs or wizards, they certainly do not want to be redigged. So shortly after Ryan stepped into the tunnel, they were attacked. 2 heavily armed mummies slammed open the weak stone walls on both sides of the passage for camouflage, and used their obsidian spears to express them to Ryan. Outsider's attitude. Uncleanness returns to silence. A pale beam hit a mummy with a rune drawn by Kleinville's teeth in the air while Ryan was casting a spell, probably because it has been abandoned for too long, and the wooden armor with the runes painted on the mummy has mostly degenerated and lost its magic defense ability. So this spell easily smashed a mummy into a ball of ash. But then another mummy took the opportunity to approach, fainting. The voice of Hermione's mantra came from behind. Unfortunately, the mummy was not a living person. This petrified mantra just made the mummy pause. But this also one time for Ryan, who took advantage of this opportunity to release another time of uncleanness and kill the mummy. Aren't South American mummies only found in alpine and dry mountains? Why are there such things in tropical rainforests? Being able to survive for thousands of years in a place with such high humidity, it can be seen that the magic in this place is more dangerous than imagined. Thinking of this, Ryan released a magical sacred weapon against the knife in his hand. Clinway's teeth emit a slight white light after Ryan reads the spell www.mplnovel.com. As long as the white light does not disappear, it means that the effect of this spell can target any evil creatures. After all, the position where the 2 mummies were ambushed was too close to them. Ryan was quite worried that the next time the channel was narrower, there was probably no room for the spell to be released, so adding targeted magic to the knife was prepared. Sure enough, mummy jumped out of the stone walls on both sides one after another. These should be the lines of defense to protect important places from outsiders. Ryan and those of them who did not get permission from the temple naturally touched them when they passed the corridor. According to the inspection of the 2 mummies just now, it can be judged that this civilization did not invent the metal smelting process, because the weapons on them are made of obsidian. For the indigenous wizards or warriors of this civilization, encountering these close-ups is hard as metal in this small place, with wooden armor with runes on their bodies. The mummy with agile action is basically a matter of 9 lives. The temple. It is also natural that this is a foolproof method of defense. But Ryan holds another civilization's curse specifically for this creature, But these mummies are abraded by the long-time mold, so they passed through the passage with no danger. Even when Ryan was familiar with how to deal with these mummies later, he also used the corpse surgery taught by the Chief of the Four Eyes to control 6 mummies to protect them. Finally, they came to a stone door. According to the map, as long as they passed this stone door, it was the core hall of the whole temple. Chapter 186, Red and White. Ryan felt that the content of his adventure was getting more and more strange. Originally, he thought that this time he was just a simple temple adventure to deal with some magic traps and institutions. The 35XS result not only has dumplings running out, but also a lot of numbers. He feels that this adventure is more and more like a fight now. However, it is normal to think about it. After all, archaeologists have found the cemeteries of ancient Mayan civilizations or nobles in many Mayan pyramid temples, just as there are many celebrity tombs in churches in Europe. So it is understandable that there is a cemetery in the Mayan temple in the magic world. The only thing I can't understand is why did the members of the blood gods choose to place their base on the cemetery? What is the difference between this and the gravehead bungee? Standing in front of the stone gate, Lane silently prayed that there would be no more dumplings in front of him. After all, he neither touched the golden charm nor the black donkey hoof, so he was really not ready to fight. Fortunately, the long time made many of the runes on the door for hiding disappeared, so Ryan used the eagle eye skills in front of the door to easily see the magic flow on the door. So he pulled out his wand and sprayed golden silk threads in the air. Let these silk threads demonstrate the magic structure on the stone door. Hermione saw Ryan write a picture in the air after seeing the magic structure demonstrated, and said to him for a while, "I'll show you." Then he quickly calculated. The 35XS 2 people together calculated that the efficiency was a lot higher. In the calculation, they found that these magic structures are not very complicated, and it only takes a little time to find the breakthrough point. 5 or 6 minutes later, Hermione signaled that she had finished the calculation, and pointed out to Ryan that in order to open the stone door, she must inject magic power into the 5 patterns on the door at the same time. After reading Hermione's calculation results, Ryan discovered that the biggest difficulty here is not simply the magic structures on the stone gate, but the 5 patterns need to be infused with magic at the same time, and each magic cannot be less than the magic of an adult wizard. The amount. Originally this was an institution set up in the past in order to prevent the penetration of hostile forces. After all, in this high-level temple, it is possible to find 5 traitors from the same force at the same time. The door in the core area is in the gods. When the temple is still functioning, foreign enemies can't break in. The stone door itself is composed of 2 large pieces of obsidian. If it is forcibly opened, it is easy to attract the attention of the people in the core hall above. But the designers of the temple should not have imagined that after thousands of years of abandoning the temple, a wizard could use special techniques to trick this stone door. Ryan fixed the 5 jade charms that were infused with magic on those patterns first, and then connected the jade charms with the silk thread stained with rooster blood, and finally held the silk thread with both hands to stimulate the magic of the charm. Yufu glowed slightly white, and the stone door opened to both sides, but Ryan was surprised by the things in the room when the stone door was opened. Behind the door is a large space for a football field. Except for a small platform at the entrance, there is an entire huge pothole. The pothole was completely filled with blood, and a lot of white bones were floating in this blood pool. Even after thousands of years, the blood is still fresh. The red blood and white bones in the blood pool are woven into a mysterious picture. There was a cloud of black mist floating in the air in the blood pool, and a throbbing buzzing sound was emitted. In the middle of the blood pool, there is a stone arch bridge without fences. One end is connected to the platform of the door, and the other end is connected to the other side of the blood pool. There is also a corresponding platform on the other side, and there is a golden door in front of the platform. From time to time, a trace of red mist appeared in the blood pool towards the gate and was absorbed by the gate. Every time the door absorbs the mist, there will be a golden light flashing, and Ryan finds that this blood-red mist appears regularly. The gate also flashed regularly with the mist flying in, feeling like a living creature breathing there. It seems that this place on the map is probably deliberately erased not because of weathering. The purpose is to hide this blood pool that looks very evil. Gosh! Hermione exclaimed with her hands covering her mouth when she came in from the back. After all, for a girl who grew up in a peaceful age, the one in front of her was really too exciting. What is going on? Hermione asked Ryan after taking a few deep breaths to stabilize her emotions. Blood sacrifice, the blood sacrifice of the Aboriginal people, Lane said to Hermione. At this time his voice was a little trembling, because he not only explained to Hermione, but also hoped to disperse his mind through such explanations to get rid of the uneasiness. Remember when he came to the Castro Bruce school on the first day? The professor told us that the brutal blood sacrifice magic was popular in this school before it was established, and this should be a place for blood sacrifice magic. And we just left. The road is probably for those sacrifices. After that, Ryan also figured out in his mind that the servants marked on the map were not the servants of the people he originally imagined. www.mtlnovel.com but need to sacrifice their lives to serve the so-called servants of the blood god. Look here. After looking at the surrounding environment, Ryan pointed to a human-shaped groove on the small platform under his feet. At that time, the sacrifice should be killed here. Then their hearts will be used for some magic rituals, and the corpses will be thrown directly in the blood pool as nourishment. How do you know? Hermione asked with a slight trembling. You probably haven't been here. The relief underneath has already explained everything. Ryan stepped on the ground lightly with her feet before Hermione moved her gaze away from the blood pool that attracted attention. Sure enough, this small platform used a relief like a cartoon to show the whole process of sacrifice. Depending on the current situation, it is not only a temple, but also a tomb. Do you remember what you saw in the history of local magic in the Castro Brusot Academy? Let me think about it. Ah, right. Hermione suddenly turned around 2 times and said suddenly, the local indigenous wizards have believed that they come from the distant Sirius from ancient times to the present, so in the high-level tombs, they will definitely start from the tomb chamber where the tomb owner is located has a passage leading directly to the location of Uranus. For us, the passage corresponding to this volume of the tomb chamber is large enough for us to escape. Yes, the only problem now is that behind the Golden Gate is the secret room, but I don't think a tomb owner who can kill so many people is a very kind person, so this blood pool may not pass so well. Ryan finished directed a mummy that had just been controlled to the stone bridge. Chapter 187, Enter the Tomb. The mummy was covered with several layers of protective spells by Ryan, and even 7 or 8 sheets of rune paper were stuck. After the preparation was completed, the mummy stepped on the stone bridge under the eyes of the two. The moment the mummy stepped on the stone bridge, it seemed as if a gust of wind blew by. The grey layer above the entire stone bridge was swept away, revealing the finely carved crystal bridge body underground. It seems to be just a welcome ceremony. Ryan just said this with a smile, and the black mist floating on the blood pool suddenly rushed towards the mummy on the bridge and enveloped him. 7 or 8 seconds later, the black mist dissipated, and the mummy turned into fragmented bones and fell into the blood pool. Ryan, this face is too fast. Just at that moment, Ryan discovered that the black mist floating on the blood pond was completely misty, but consisted of a large group of small sesame-sized bugs. The body of these insects has a restraint effect on magic and has a strong ability to gnaw. In the state of their clusters just now, they easily gnawed the mummy ready for full magic defense in just a few seconds. After that, Ryan tried to throw samples of various things on the bridge, but all the objects on his body could not stop the gnaw of this thing. But during the experiment, Ryan also found that these insects had 2 states of reality. In reality, the illusory state of the spirit is even more lethal to the living items than to the inanimate objects in their physical state. Under the bribe of the 5 cans of sunshine, Xiaoqing sacrificed a doppelganger to detect the incident. In the same way, the magic defense of these insects is also very high, and all the magic is not good for them. It seems that the hard break is just adding nourishment to the blood pool underneath. Otherwise we would simply go back and head straight away from the main road. Hermione saw Ryan standing here and tried for a long time, but she still looked ugly and proposed. The problem is that the people who are stuck on the main road are terrorists. Ryan hesitated for a moment, but thinking about the information he got about the blood religion, he was firm. Witches who fall into their hands tend to become the raw materials for their experiments. Compared to that, at least the side can die a little bit happier. Besides, I think I already have a way to deal with these bugs. Ryan finished taking a piece of white cloth with various mysterious patterns from the space bag and laying it on the connection between the platform and the bridge, and then sat cross-legged on the white cloth. This piece of white cloth was made by using the spider silk obtained by the 8-eyed giant spider in the Forbidden Forest after the extermination of the 8-eyed giant spider. Many precious materials were used to draw many runes. The effect of this cloth is that it can be used as a temporary altar where there is no altar, but it can only be used 3 times. After which the magic power above will be exhausted. After sitting on the white cloth, Ryan pulled out a knife from his arms and cut a hole in his hand to let blood gather on the floor in front of him. After that, Clinwise teeth were dipped into the blood to draw runes in the air. These runes became silver runes after being drawn, floating in midair and slowly rotating around Ryan. It looks like Chinese characters, Hermione whispered to herself on the side. Indeed, this is the rune that communicates with the undead in Moshan's Taoist lore. If the Nordic life magic is like a fire, it is good at neatly manipulating all kinds of dead creatures and dead forces, and it has a good effect on the undead who have no self-consciousness. The means of communication between the east and the deceased and the running water generally tend to be a little bit of penetration of the moist matter, which is more gentle in operation, and is also conducive to communicating with these undead who may have self-awareness. Tai Shang Chao made Kaorugyugyu ghosts and ghosts charm all 4 lives. Ryan glanced at the worms on the pool after chanting the spell, and found that the worms flew even more chaotically. This requiem should theoretically calm these insect swarms. He decided to see what was going on, so he gestured with his left hand, opened the eyes of the sky, then opened his eyes silently. Everything in front of him turned into a grey color. He first checked himself and Hermione, and found that the 3 orange life fires on the 2 people were burning, which meant that their souls were temporarily in good condition. Later when he turned his gaze to the blood pool, he was stunned. because he saw countless blue yin ghost fires floating above the blood pool. Each ghost fire represents a soul after human death, and now the bright spot above the blood pool represents that there are at least nearly 100,000 souls in this place. Just normal souls are different. These souls stay there as stiff as they are frozen. Each soul is bound by a black chain of mist. But these souls should still have a little instinct. Ryan saw them miraculously surrounding his platform and silently stopped in midair. This should have been attracted to the spell that Lane had just passed over. It seems that the Kadu mantra is useful. I thought that Ryan added meritorious power while chanting. As Ryan chanted, the black mist entangled in these ghost fires gradually dispersed. After chanting 49 times in the super degree, the black mist finally completely dissipated. These ghost fires also slowly recovered from the original state like freezing, and began to have some smart breath. But unlike the soul that is generally overrun, afterwards Ryan has no effect on chanting the overrun mantra, and he felt that these souls seem to have some information to tell him. They shouldn't be malicious. www.mtlnovel.com Ryan thought while sending out a thought to the soul in front of him, hoping they could select a few generations to tell themselves what they wanted to say. A few minutes later, 3 ghost fires, larger than other ghost fires, came out in front of Ryan, and then sent a thought like Lane. This idea contained a lot of information. It took Ryan several minutes before receiving the idea to understand what kind of information these ghosts wanted to tell him. This pyramid is indeed a temple, but it is also the tomb of the most powerful wizard king in ancient times. In this era when the Witch King and his wizards ruled the earth, they could take out fertile seeds, use powerful magic to change the river to level the land, and make the wood and stone tools in the hands of the indigenous people tougher than metal. In this case, the local indigenous people with powerful forces quickly conquered the surrounding large areas, and a jungle empire was born. It was thought that all people could live so happy under the rule of the wizard, but they forgot that the wizard is also a human, and will grow old as time goes by. So the Witch King began to frantically search for the road to eternal life. One day, the Witch King said goodbye, and returned to here with a wound all over the ear. Since then, the Witch King has become extremely violent. He killed all those who advised him, even his favorite concubine and the most loyal minister. To force everyone to build this huge pyramid for him in the space he opened. All the souls in this blood pool are the souls of the builders who were killed because they were not smooth enough during the construction of the pyramid. Chapter 188, Enter the Tomb. Eternal life, whether it is a mole or a wizard, will always be stunned by this thing, and then do countless evil deeds. Think about the Emperor Qin Shi Huang of that year, and then think of his soul as a slice of bread and finally make it completely humanoid and human Voldemort. You know how many heroes are planted on it. The Witch King in the Amazon rainforest is just one of these people. While Ryan was thinking about this, more information poured into his mind, and I have to say that soul communication is a very good way. He can get around the most troublesome language barrier. It turned out that after these people died, the Witch King did not let them go. He attached their souls to this kind of insect called Demon Eater, let them keep their gates for life, and at the same time continually their soul energy produced by pain. They gradually lost themselves in the millennium of torture, until Ryan helped them regain their consciousness just now with an excessive spell with a lot of merit. So they are willing to give Ryan everything they have in hand, provided that Ryan takes them through the door that they can't wear anyway, the magical door set by the Witch King, so that they can send them to the Witch King revenge. Ryan pondered for a while. After all, this meant that the bugs should be restored to their souls and attached to the body, but in this way, their own souls were open to them. Once they were guilty, Ryan would be lost. The leading 3 souls had rich social experiences during their lifetime, and they saw at a glance what Ryan was worried about. So they proposed that death could be used as a witness, and they vowed not to harm Ryan in the process. Soon they made an oath, and Ryan felt that the oath was very high, even higher than the unbreakable oath. In this case, Ryan also let go of her heart, and when she was open, she was ready to accept these souls. Hermione watched anxiously as Ryan sat there motionlessly. If it weren't for Ryan's chest that was slowly undulating, she even thought something had happened to Ryan. Suddenly Ryan stood up and stepped out of the cloth on the ground towards the crystal arch bridge at the edge of the platform. Hermione subconsciously wanted to hold Ryan, but unfortunately he was slowed down half a shot, only to watch Ryan walk out of the platform and step onto the arch bridge. No. The next scene made Hermione scream, because she saw a dark blue fluorescent light begin to ignite in the black mist on the blood pool, and then the whole black mist rushed into Ryan. At the same time, a lot of black mist was also produced in the blood pool and flew to Ryan. Just as she was about to rush to the bridge, she was suddenly bound by the light from the white cloth blocking the intersection, and she could only watch the clouds of black mist pouring into Ryan's body. Finally, all the black mist poured into Ryan's body, and after a while of stiffness, he finally recovered his mobility. He turned his hands and feet and turned around. After seeing Hermione set on the white cloth by magic, Ryan waved his hand and released the magic. At that time, he was worried that Hermione would rush up directly when he was excited, so he made preparations in advance, and the last thing was as he expected. As soon as the shackles were released, Hermione immediately rushed up and hugged Ryan, then immediately released them and took a step back to ask, "Are you all right now?" "It's okay. Just now I have talked to those souls in the dark mist and they made a simple deal that is beneficial to both parties. Now we can cross the bridge." After finishing, Ryan put away the white cloth and Hermione. After the 5 mummies shouted, they crossed the crystal bridge. Sure enough, when walking across the crystal bridge, there was no longer the black fog. Hermione was so clever when she saw this scene that she didn't ask what happened just now. On the platform opposite the blood pool, the golden gate appeared in front of them. With the help of the pile of souls in his mind, Ryan recognized that the pattern on the door was actually their text. And all the words engraved on this golden gate just recorded the honorary title of the Witch King. "It's such a big show." Ryan sighed as he read the words on the door according to the instructions of the souls. When the last syllable fell, the golden gate opened inwards, revealing an oblique upward passage made of small square stones. Ryan routinely directed a mummy to explore the way. This mummy was completely destroyed by an inexplicable force as soon as he entered the passage. He didn't even know where this mummy-destroying force came from. "This is the life set by the Witch King." At that time, a voice of soul sounded in Ryan's mind, which was sent by the old soul who was just chosen to represent. "Although I don't know magic, I participated in the construction of this pyramid temple as a scholar. I was the last group of people killed because of a small mistake. Now I think that the Witch King should keep it secret." "Let's kill someone," said the soul with a bit of laughter. "But before I was killed, I had seen the design of this temple. The back of the golden gate was called Between Life, and no undead creatures were allowed to enter. The magic on the golden gate is not allowed." We entered www.mplnovel.com at that time. Maybe we were worried that we would choose to enter the golden gate to obtain eternal silence after suffering. In this way, no one would guard his blood pool for the Witch King. It seems that these mummies can't be taken away, because after entering the pyramid, the Wonji grocery store believes that it has been in a state of battle now, so Ryan can't put it into the Wonji grocery store. After solving the mummies one by one, Ryan and they stepped into the tomb. Only then did Ryan discover that the entire door was made of gold, the first metal that humans can use, and the tomb of the tomb owner revealed undoubtedly. The entire tomb gleamed with a slight white light, in stark contrast to the darkness and stillness of the place where he had walked before. It seems that the owner of this tomb really believes that he can gain eternal life, so on the way into the tomb, he is completely dressed up according to the world of living people. Naturally, there is no organ in this tomb. On the one hand, the owner of the tomb may feel that the blood pool plus the demon worm has been able to kill all uninvited guests. Such a large-scale tomb owner does not have enough resources to set up a second similar defense. And for those who can get past the defensive measures just now, it is just a superfluous thing to set up an institution that is not as good as it. On the other hand, he may feel that he is in eternal life, the tomb is his home, and normal people will only set traps outside the door of the house, and few people will set up traps in the living room. After confirming that there were no traps here, Ryan and Hermione sat down in the middle of the tomb and began to rest. By the way, Ryan took a bottle of water from her bag and handed it to Hermione. After all, they had been here for more than an hour, so it is very necessary to take a good rest before facing the next challenge. Chapter 189, The Last Trap. "Why are you carrying everything? It feels like you know in advance that something will happen today," Hermione asked curiously after drinking. "You guessed it," Ryan said half-truthfully. "After all, this matter is too ridiculous this morning. So I was thinking about bringing something. At least I was prepared better than I was unprepared. I didn't expect something to happen." After he finished, he shrugged. After listening to Ryan's answer and Hermione was clever and didn't ask anything, she sat quietly and closed her eyes after drinking the water. After a few minutes of rest, they packed up their things and continued along this path toward the main burial chamber. Although this is a tomb on the other side of the earth, many places still conform to the Feng Shui philosophy of the heavens. So after a large number of forks appeared in the road ahead, Lane chose the road leading to the tomb. Because it is the right path, the more forward it is, the more luxurious it is. Mosaic patterns began to appear on both sides of the road, even embellished with gold and precious stones. But Ryan just walked in front of him without squinting. After all, let us not mention that there is a permanent paste spell in the magic world that can't be removed. If you think about so many treasures in the tomb robbery novels, you will always have them. It's a variety of traps, so Ryan won't trouble himself at this time. But looking at these good things but not being able to take them is also a very irritating thing. Fortunately, after bypassing a huge stone pillar that used a relief to tell the owner of the tomb step by step, he finally found the wide hall. 35xs. Judging from the distance they just traveled, they should theoretically have traversed the entire pyramid. But the fact is that they are still inside the pyramid. The only possibility in this case is that there is an independent space behind the golden door, and this possibility has brought Ryan to another step in the evaluation of the tomb owner's magical ability. After all, it is a very complicated thing to open another space in an artificial space, and only a sorcerer who is very researched in this area can do this. This hall is very similar to the square at the entrance of the pyramid, except that the totem poles on the square were replaced with the statues of indigenous wizards wearing feather crowns and feather wands. At the other end of the hall, a thick-looking wooden gate stood there, and a complex sculpture was written on the door with the word Kingdom. Behind this door should be the final destination, the main burial chamber. After all, for an already mad wizard, the place where he thinks he is in eternal life can be regarded as the kingdom of God, and only where he himself is. According to the common bridge sections of tomb-robbing novels, if there is no defensive measures along the way to the tomb, it is likely that the final level of the tomb will be entered. Some unlucky eggs left behind to accompany the tomb owner. In a magical world, the danger of these traps tends to increase by several levels. Since entering the Golden Gate, this journey is no different from an outing, which makes Ryan's inner uneasiness stronger and stronger. When he saw the wooden door in front of him, he immediately subconsciously thought that if there was a problem, the problem would definitely be in this hall. Now that there is suspicion, it is definitely not possible to hit the head-iron directly, especially if there is a trailing leg around. Thinking of here, Ryan asked Hermione to retreat behind the pillar in front, and told her not to come out no matter what she heard, and at the same time let Xiao King secretly hide in her body to protect it secretly. After they hid, Ryan picked up Xiao King's avatar and threw it into the hall. After 2 shots on the ground, he stopped on the road in the center of the hall, but after a few minutes, nothing happened. This is a bit embarrassing, but when Ryan just planned to step into the hall, he suddenly stopped because he found a place that was a bit wrong. Basically all the sculptures were exaggerated abstract art sculptures with local indigenous styles. That is to say, all the content of the sculpture is different from the real thing in the proportion of each part. Although these wizard sculptures in the hall that now look exaggerated, their physical proportions are basically the same as those of real people. Isn't that the case? Ryan whispered to the contents of a movie in which a major director of a previous life starred. But think about the owner of this tomb can kill 100,000 men-made blood pools, and do that kind of cruel thing is also expected. Thinking of here, Ryan took out more than 30 thumb-sized jade symbols. Each of these jade symbols is crystal clear. If you look closely, you can still see the golden lightning flow inside. This is mostly the inventory obtained from Uncle G. I hope my guess is not true, otherwise I won't know when it will be possible to get such a good replenishment of jade next time. On the side, let Xiao King's avatar put a jade symbol on each statue. After getting ready, Ryan walked into the hall with a slap-sized jade card in his hand. As soon as he stepped on the floor of the hall with one foot, all the stone skins on the sculpture began to fall off. Ryan could even see some of the stone skins showing rotten fabric and black skin after they fell. Biji Ming Ming Wanli Divine Monarch Bida Kyuan Kaising Xuanming. Ryan immediately recited the spell of thunder spell upon seeing this situation, and finally placed it on the corpses sealed in the sculpture before lifting up the wand before casting a spell jade symbol. When the jade symbol was activated, it suddenly released the powerful energy contained inside, and the entire hall was flooded with golden lightning. Lane had to squint to avoid being hurt by these strong electro-optics. More than 10 seconds later, the lightning storm in the hall finally ended, and all the corpses were burned to coke. www.mtlnovel.com. Lane just planned to step forward to clean up the battlefield, but found that these coke-burned dry bodies floated. A white soul fire started. They're alive. Ryan opened his eyes in surprise as more and more soul fire floated out of the debris on the ground, and then slowly built a figure in the air. A few minutes later, more than 30 figures with milky white light fluttered in the air. It seems that Gong Shenlai not only destroyed the corpses, but also purified the soul inside. The leading wizard in a robe and a crown of feathers gave Ryan a gift from a local native, then stood up and began to whisper. Fortunately, the souls at the door just let Ryan understand their language, so they can understand what the wizard is saying. According to the account of Ryan, these wizards were disciples or subordinates of the Witch King, and later they were made into something called a cocoon by the Witch King. This kind of thing had the soul of a living person, but died. They have been deprived of control of their bodies, but they can still feel everything from the outside world, and the continuous energy in the blood pool outside the door makes them neither dead nor crazy, and always remain calm and bear torture. Because their souls belong to living people, they will not be destroyed by the magic in the tomb. And the living soul can also ensure that when outsiders enter this hall, they have enough flexibility to cause serious damage to the intruder. Fortunately, I've got a long eye, or I'll be dead today. Ryan breathed out after listening to the soul before him. Even after they were made into cocoons, their fighting power was not as good as before, but the number of more than 30 was enough to cause serious damage to him. Chapter 190, As Dead as Life. In a messy hall, Ryan asked the soul in front of them after telling their story, "Can you tell me what is behind this door?" "It was the palace where the Witch King lived. Everything in it was prepared for his eternal life," said a younger-looking witch soul standing in the back row. "The Witch King inside is my father. He used to be. I heard it when I was talking to myself in the palace, and after he found me, I was made into a cocoon." It seemed that there would be no other traps ahead. Thinking of Ryan's mood here, he asked the souls in front of him, "What are your plans now?" After these souls got together and whispered for a while, the soul who had just claimed to be the daughter of the Witch King came to the front to salute Ryan, and then said, "The Witch King is great, but he is no longer him after the journey to pursue longevity. We hope you can take us in and send him to where he should go, so that we can fulfill our wish and then die going down the road." Signing the oath again with death itself, Ryan's consciousness moved into a group of temporary residents. Looking at the mess on the ground, Ryan finally knows why such a powerful civilization disappears without making a cocoon. Not everyone can succeed. More than 30 corpses represent at least 300 dead behind. Wizard. After all, the stronger the anything in the magic world, the lower the success rate. The success rate of making a corpse warrior with a shelf life of no more than half a year in Ryan's life magic heritage is more than 80%. The success rate is not so high. Even according to the souls of the wizards just now, when the Witch King made them, he had realized the mysteries of life and death. The success rate of such things will not exceed 1/10. Think again about this civilization's complicated writing system, which is very unfavorable for the spread of culture. The number of wizards may be a little less than other civilizations. Illiterate people can never reach the level of normal wizards. These sorcerers that the Witch King killed to make the cocoon are probably most of the wizards on the territory, coupled with those in the blood pool outside related to the construction of the temple. It is estimated that those who mastered the knowledge of the entire civilization died here. A civilization that has lost its inheritors and leaders of knowledge will quickly lead to civil war or flight because this land cannot bear enough people to lose enough magic and knowledge. In the end, they will be completely abandoned to the wild. It is likely that the small city-states and pyramid temples in Central America were built by the people who fled here, but they can only form a simplified version of civilization without sufficient magic and knowledge. No wonder that the Witch King's daughter said that he was no longer him. To completely destroy the civilization he built for eternal life, this is simply not something a normal human can do. After sighing about the destruction of a great civilization, Ryan began to search for loot from the coke on the ground. Each wizard is enclosed in a sculpture with a variety of magic props on it, but unfortunately, as time goes by and the lightning baptism just happened, there are very few things that can really be left behind. But it is definitely a good thing that can survive the double blow of time lapse and thunderstorm. Ryan finally harvested an obsidian ceremonial knife, a meteorite amulet and a gold-edged emerald slate. After asking about the souls of the wizards in the sea, the owner of the thing told the usage of magic props in front of Lane. So Ryan harvested a knives for spirits that could be used in magic rituals, an amulet that could withstand a death attack, and a magical lithograph of corpse manipulation and corpse transformation. Finally, Ryan burned the corpse to ashes with flames, then took out several empty bottles filled with ashes, and chose a good place in the hall to pry the floor tiles and bury the bottles. After all, their souls provided a lot of help to Ryan, so in this case it would be inappropriate for them to stay here. So Ryan took some effort to help them settle down. As for the blood pool just now, there is really no choice but to ask someone to bury it after going out. After cleaning the battlefield, Lane returned to call Hermione back. When he found Hermione, she was found leaning on the pillar, crossing her fingers on her knees and praying for Ryan. "Are you okay?" Hermione saw the disgraced Ryan coming over and immediately stood up and asked. "It's okay, it's just that when you finish playing the lute after the fight, you get grey." Then Ryan gave the meteorite amulet to Hermione. "This thing can avoid an imminent attack. You can take it with you. After all, it is very dangerous here. You can rest assured that you carry this." Hermione nodded and took the amulet on her body, and the two came to the wooden door. Ryan pushed the door open after checking the door according to the instructions of the souls in his mind. The moment he opened the door, he was stunned, because before him was a samurai wearing gold armor and an obsidian spear. Ryan could even see the complicated tattoos on his face. The subconscious Ryan both waved something in their hands at the same time to prepare the spell, especially as Ryan felt extremely nervous now, because there is an iron law in the life spell: the more powerful the dead creatures are, the smaller the difference is when they are alive, and how powerful a guy like the one in front of him can be. But it may be that the wind brought up when waving his arm, and the samurai quickly turned into a powder in front of them. A set of gold equipment on his body crackled and fell everywhere. Ryan stepped forward to examine it carefully, only to find that the samurai had died before him. But because it has been closed for thousands of years, it is intact under the protection of magic. www.mplnovel.com. But when they opened the door, the closed environment was completely broken, so he naturally turned into dust. This turned out to be the case. No matter the color on the kin figurines or the lotus roots in the Wang Dui Han tomb, rapid weathering after the environment changed is a common phenomenon in the archaeological world. Even if it is in the magic world, many principles are common. Ryan, after figuring out the reason, they bypassed the pile of gold armor in the middle of the road and walked forward. At this time, Ryan can be sure that they are now in another space in the temple, because inside this gate is a complete temple. There is even a golden magic ball in the sky that releases light as the sun. Time seems to be frozen here. There is a soldier on guard under each pillar of the temple, and the maids in 2s and 3s are distributed in the courtyard. In the middle of the courtyard, The gorgeously dressed sacrificial priests seemed to be heading to the golden temple in front of them to see their gods. Everything is the same as when the Witch King was alive, but all the organic matter that is visible to the naked eye is rapidly weathering. Of course, when they walked ahead of the golden pyramid temple, everything before that disappeared. Only a pile of ashes and scattered stones and gold products were left. "Do you want to stay here?" Lane asked Hermione. "Because the temple above should be the most dangerous place inside. I think if the contents can defeat you, it is not safe in this pyramid, and I am not cumbersome. Maybe I can help you when I go up," Hermione said firmly after thinking for a while. "Okay, let's go up together." After the two of them finished walking down the steps to the building at the top of the pyramid. Chapter 191, Blood God. Blood God. After adding all the magical protections he had to himself and Hermione, they set foot on the steps of this golden pyramid temple. Even small wizards like them can feel the majestic magic of the building at the top of the pyramid, and their nerves are naturally tense. While walking on the stairs, Lane discovered that the pyramid was actually a stone. It's just a thick layer of gold. But even if only a layer of gold is plated, this layer of gold may be almost the same as the amount of gold currently stored by the Federation in the radiating world. You know that the Federation in the radiant world has expanded to Washington and New York before the war, and everyone has collected a lot of gold from those places. However, the gold in a ruin thousands of years ago can actually be compared with the gold reserves of the industrial era, which shows the power and strength of the Witch King. When lamenting the local tyrants of the Witch King, they finally took the last step to the building entrance at the top of the pyramid. Such a gorgeous pyramid was actually made of wood, and even Lane could smell the light wood fragrance. But this kind of wood fragrance makes Ryan feel even more terrible, compared with everything below that has been turned into dirt. Being able to keep the fresh wood for a long time is even more awe-inspiring to the powerful magic in the building. After repeatedly checking that it was just an ordinary wooden door, Ryan took a deep breath to calm down and then opened the door hard. Rain has a lot of speculation about what is behind the door. For example, inside is a sacred temple, where the Witch King is as high as and on the throne. It may also be that the Witch King was lying quietly in a multi-layered golden coffin, surrounded by countless puppets. Even Lane thought that the Witch King might have traveled to the east when he traveled that year, so he chose the oriental style to build an empty space in the hall, and the ground was pieced together with various layouts to map out his power, with anti-gravity attached spells. The obsidian coffin with the Witch King was dragged in the hall by 9 dead feather snakes made into puppets. In short, there are countless possibilities in this temple. But after opening the door, Ryan found an old man with red hair and wrinkles on his face, decorated with all kinds of gold, gems, and feathers. He sat on the throne in the middle of the temple, and the most terrible thing was to sit the old man on the throne is alive. This was a scene that Ryan had never thought of before. The fight met the two Mona, and the two Mona was not a dumpling but alive. Obviously, it is impossible to solve the problem by closing the door and exiting in this case. Think of an Aching living in a place for more than 1,000 years, when someone rushed in and woke him up. Waking up is definitely not a normal person can bear. Think about the mummy, blood pool and corpse cocoon just now. It seems that there is only the way to fight now. Thinking of Ryan squeezing a trick here, a flash of lightning flew out. But at that moment, the man in the seat shouted, "Wait, little guys, this is not the place to fight." Ryan was too late to take back his spell at this time, but the spell that could severely injure an ordinary wizard suddenly disappeared less than a foot from the figure close to the seat. "Okay guy, stop. We have important things to do now," the old man said weakly after taking a few breaths. Ryan also lowered his arm and stopped the attack. After all, before figuring out why the attack was completely ineffective, he felt that there was basically no possibility of harming the old man in front of him. Since the other side yelled to stop with such a big advantage, then in this case, stop and listen to what he said is the best choice now. Now that the battle has stopped, Ryan took advantage of this opportunity to start looking at the situation in the temple. After all, it is very necessary to confirm the surrounding environment under such an unknown situation. If you talk about a break in a while, you can use it whether you are attacking or running. But with just a glance, Ryan returned his gaze. Because this space is so clean, how clean can it be? There was nothing but the blood-red throne in the middle of the room. Yes, there is no carving, no furniture, and no daily necessities. Outside the flat stone floor and ceiling in this hall, there are only 4 walls that are equally flat, and the only decoration is the star map on the ceiling. Ryan began to believe that this guy might have become a god. After all, apart from this explanation, he couldn't figure out anything other than the gods. He could sit on a seat for thousands of years while still staying alive. Ryan felt that if he was put here, even if magic could keep him alive for thousands of years, but if he sat there all day and looked at this untouched bare ground and wall, it would be mad after a year. The old man seemed to understand Ryan's mind, and he chuckled lightly on it, saying, "Don't try to understand the gods with the eyes of your human ants like ants. www.mtlnovel.com. You can't imagine the power of God." Well, withdrawing the previous words, Ryan felt that this one was insane in front of him, so he quickly excluded himself from the scope of people. And importantly, He felt that the man in front of him had not seen anything beyond human power except for 1,000 years. After all, this is the magical world, and it can be said that the Eternal Life Alchemist Stone and the Horcrux can do it, and it is not difficult for many powerful wizards to prepare in advance for the magic wizard to silently catch a spell. If he insisted, Ryan felt that the only thing he couldn't understand now was how he could have no problem with the lumbar spine and hemorrhoids without sitting still for 1,000 years. Reassuring the restless souls in the sea after seeing the old man, Ryan asked, "So, since you are all gods, why do you want me to help? I saw your disrespect in your eyes. Don't you know who I am?" The old man sitting on the throne asked Ryan with some anger and raised his hand in anger. "Isn't it the Witch King who notified this land thousands of years ago?" "No, that was just my name when I was human, and now I am called the Blood God." Blood God. This honorary title is a bit evil. The legendary title of God also represents their position. In this way, the word of God in front of him should be an evil spirit. Ryan thought silently in his heart, and suddenly he moved and asked, "If you are really the of blood, why don't you call the wizards above known as the of blood to serve you, or let me an outsider help you?" "No, don't mention those guys, they all deserve to die." The old self-proclaimed blood must be angry after hearing Ryan's question. It seems there should be a story in it. Chapter 192, Secret Weapon. Perhaps the violent gesture just made him feel a little like a god. The old man quickly calmed down and said, "Anyway, I have waited for 1,000 years, and the situation is no longer urgent. It will be for a while and a half. So let me give you talk about the ins and outs of this matter. After I established the country, I blessed the people here for nearly 100 years. Later, I was old and worried that no one could bless this country, so I began to travel around the world to find a way to live. After a difficult search, I finally found something near the island of the same ethnicity as the girl who lived in the northeast, the Bloodstone." The old man pointed to Hermione. "Bloodstone." Ryan and Hermione glanced at each other, and both shook their heads to say they didn't know. This is no wonder. After all, most of the books they read belong to publicly published books. Those who want to come to the level of Bloodstone will not be described in those more popular books. "Don't you ever hear about it?" "But it doesn't matter, it won't affect my next story. I got the Bloodstone is an accident. When I was resting on a small island north of the island, I saw the sea nearby. There is a wizard who even thinks I think powerful now kills a huge blood-red octopus. After the octopus dies, I feel that it has what I want in it, so I don't know what to think of that wizard at that time. Rushed up to the blood-red stone flying out of the octopus. The wizard might think I snatched his loot and repeatedly said that this blood-red thing was an evil thing to let me put down. I ignored him, and he kept chasing me afterwards. I finally got the closest he got rid of his pursuit on the mainland, but he also caused permanent damage to me. Dragging the broken body back here, I used the blood source stone to repair my wounds. While building a real kingdom of gods, I use the power of the blood source stone to open up a new world and move my servants come in and let them enjoy eternal life like me through some magic rituals. From that time, I am God. Ryan felt that the souls who knew the sea at this time were even more angry, but this guy who claimed to be a blood didn't find his strangeness and was still immersed in his past memories. But what I didn't expect is that the bloodstone actually has its own thoughts. As I use its energy, it will even control me in reverse, and the most important thing is to use the opportunity to control me. The blood sacrifice magic spread out and penetrated into my blood religion to transform my believers into it. In the end, this thing was discovered by me, but at that time I had become one with it. After a battle, my capital was destroyed, and I was trapped together with it. It was suppressed by heavy seals. It is a pity that the seal cannot be as eternal as ours. The bloodstone even broke through the seal a few years ago. Even if I blocked it back in time, it still sent a signal to summon the descendants of the blood gods. Unfortunately, my heir has been extinct, and now the blood dog's stray dog bears this flag. Now, they're controlling a powerful weapon with another group of people on it. Soon that weapon will use its power to completely destroy the seal here, and then it will replace me as the blood god. So boy, I need your help to help me destroy that weapon. In return, I will teach you everything I have learned all my life. Ryan didn't believe him very much. It's just that the weapon is likely to be used to attack the school, so it is also a good way to let them bite dogs. Thinking of this, he asked the old man on the throne, "But there are many wizards there. I haven't grown up yet. I can't beat them at all." "This is simple. You don't need to confront them head-on. They can be in the hall because that hall is the core of the temple's energy, and they draw huge energy there to recharge the weapon. But I didn't notice it before I slept. When I woke up, it was too late. Fortunately, now that I am awake, you are fortunate enough to be able to enter my kingdom of God to get this opportunity. As long as they can interrupt their ritual and stop them for 10 seconds, I can control the energy in the pyramid to kill them. After that, you will get the divine grace I gave." After talking, the old man patted the armrest of the throne, and a golden door appeared in the hall. "From here you will leave my kingdom of God and appear in the secret passage beside that hall. It will be up to you next." When she and Hermione came to the secret road through the golden gate, Hermione asked anxiously next to him, "Do you think the person who just claimed to be the blood is telling the truth?" "Probably not," Ryan said, "but these blood gods are not good people. At least we have the same needs to eliminate the blood god. After talking, Ryan looked at the people in the hall through a peephole. www.mtnovel.com. Most of them were blood gods in blood red robes, which were mixed with members of the Chimera Society wearing various robes. At this time, all the people in the hall were gathered to look at the stage at the end of the hall, and Ryan could vaguely hear the voice from the stage. In another half hour, such a powerful weapon will be fully charged. After that we will use it to destroy the Castro Academy to inform the world of our rise. From now on, we will live in the sun again. Long live. The people below cheered in various languages. Ryan walked a few steps along the secret path and changed to people, finally seeing what was on the table. A black body with a height of more than 5 meters and a diameter of more than 4 meters is suspended in the air and looks like a big bell in a church. Countless blood red rays shoot from the surrounding walls and link to this thing. It should be recharging it. At this time, the bell vibrated with the naked eye, like a beast bound. When Ryan cast his gaze on the top of this thing, the bronze anti-10,000 character above explained the identity of this thing. The German doomsday clock of World War II? Does this really exist? What did Grindelwald do then? Seeing Ryan's abnormal look, Hermione leaned forward. What's wrong? Do you need me to help you? Nothing. Ryan comforted Hermione and continued. You'll go to hide in the innermost bunker, and I will get the rest done quickly. Hermione also knew the situation at this time, nodded and ran to the innermost bunker to hide. Ryan estimated the distance and groped while groping for a space bag. Fortunately, I brought a stuff under the pressure box, otherwise I would never be able to handle the 30+ people underneath. Chapter 193, Real Blood God appeared. Ryan felt in the space pocket and took out an iron shelf that was half a person tall with a yellow cylinder. Then he came up with an ostrich egg-sized shell. If you weren't a militia general, you wouldn't get such a good thing. You just don't know how it would work for the wizard, Ryan thought while loading the fat man's bomb and carrying the launcher to the secret door. After taking a deep breath to stabilize his spirit, Ryan directly opened the secret door and fired a fat nuclear bomb at the crowd gathering area before the other party responded. Then he quickly closed the door. After closing the door, Ryan heard the sound of several spells hitting the door, followed by a violent explosion. Even behind the stone wall with magical protection, Ryan could feel a slight vibration. The magic attack only paused for a second or two, and then 1 or 2 more magic hit the stone wall. But with the end of the 10-second countdown, after a few screams, the whole space returned to silence. Ryan looked out through the people again and found that the doomsday clock had been skewed to the side, and the bright red light that had been connected to it had completely disappeared. The place where people stood under the doomsday clock has turned into a pile of black and gray, and there are 4 figures on the platform standing motionless, but each of them looks pale, as if all the blood in the body has disappeared. Ryan opened the secret door and cracked the 4 figures on the stage with the magic of life, and found that all 4 were dead. Hiss, what magic is this? Ryan gasped. The situation is now clear, and the wizards were killed by a close-up nuclear bomb explosion. But the guys above didn't know what method to use to carry the nuclear bomb and then attacked the place where Ryan had just appeared. It's just that they were killed in an instant when the defensive magic in the pyramid started later. Thinking like this, the guy named Blood God is more powerful than expected. Because he didn't know what traps there were in this hall, Ryan didn't dare to go out and pick up the loot. Instead, he called Hermione and walked through the Golden Gate to return to the palace. But what they didn't find was that when they just left, the remains in the hall slowly disappeared, and at the same time everything in the hall was restored to its original state, and finally only the doomsday clock fell over there. Before returning to the temple, Ryan quietly held something in his left hand, then hid his left hand in his sleeve. As soon as he entered the hall, the guy who sat on the throne stood up happily and raised his waist, saying, "Very well, you have helped me clear the obstacles, and the God of Blood will reign over this land. Always be with the glory of God." After a strong wave of soul swept down from the throne, Lane immediately felt dizzy. Fortunately, under the cries of Moshan's mind and sea of souls, he finally regained control of his body, but Hermione next to him had no eyes, and he seemed to be controlled by the Blood God. Since the traitors of the Blood Gods have betrayed, I have never seen such a good experiment. You, come up and let me take a good look. The old man on the throne pointed to Ryan and drank. Ryan hugged Yuan Shui, and then walked in front of the throne slowly, pretending to be under control and pretending to be under control. Let me see. The old man sitting on the throne just took out an obsidian plate and let Ryan hold it with his right hand, then looked down at the obsidian plate as if to analyze something, but he just put his hand on the slate. I heard the sound of the engine starting with a click. Then a knife suddenly popped out of the right arm under the obsidian to stab him in the heart, forcing him to sideways to avoid the blow. But he didn't expect Ryan's left hand to protrude from the sleeve at the same time and take a jade card directly to the armrest of the throne, and then the jade card shattered, and the large groups of lightning also blasted the 2 people from the throne at the same time. While being blown off, Ryan saw that Xiao King, who had previously hidden on Hermione, had formed a set of armor on her and ran her out of the temple. Ryan, who had no worries, just stood up, holding his left hand, and saw the old man lying motionless there. The blood-red throne slowly wriggled up, and finally formed a human figure composed of blood. "Sure enough, the throne is the main body," he said. Just now this person described himself as too bright and right. But how can a guy who can kill 100,000 innocent human beings, even his own daughter and wife not let go, can be a good person? In addition, since he entered the temple hall until now, no matter what happened, he did not leave his throne. Isn't this a problem? It is now a temptation. So now it's time for battle. Ryan endured the pain and took out a bunch of jade charms and threw them at the humanoid in front of him. With a crackling noise, a large number of thunder and lightning left a scorch mark on his body. A new layer of blood brushed up these scars and disappeared. "Useless, I am a god. How can a mortal hurt God? You have successfully angered me now." After this, blood man folded his hands together, then slowly pulled away. A blood-red long stick appeared in his hand. "Do you know what you just did? I would have devoured everything that the Witch King had set up in this tower to get his body, and with that body, I would become a real god. But the bug in my hand makes me need to spend another 500 years. Speaking of the blood man's long stick, a crescent-shaped breath went straight to Ryan. Ryan rolled to the side, flashing off the attack very embarrassed. "I swear, I will alive to drain the blood of you and your companions. Then make you cocoons and let your soul wailing inside www.mtlnovel.com 1,000 years, 10,000 years." At the end, said a large amount of swearing was spitting out, and he was obviously going to be mad. "Wait, so in front of me, this is not a Witch King, but a blood source stone. 10,000 years, this is too ruthless." Da Sheng was only crushed for 500 years. But then again, they are all stones. Sun Wukong became Kishan dashing in 1,000 years. "Your bloodstone has become this kind of undesirable rubbish. Even their human form has not been repaired." Ryan slandered while avoiding the blood attack around the hall, and from time to time he fired a spell to hit him, causing a scar. It is a pity that no matter how many scars are caused, they will disappear in less than 10 seconds. Ryan's spirit is very nervous, because the souls he saw before prove that his threat is not untargeted. If he can't hold it, he can only use the escape system of the grocery store to run away. But after chasing for a while, the blood man stood back to his original position, and then raised his long stick in his hand and slammed the ground. Ryan thought he was going to make a big move, and he was frightened to quickly add several defenses in front of him. But there was no attack, only a circular black hole appeared on the ceiling of the hall directly above the blood man. Soon a trace of blood-red breath flew out of the black hole into the blood man. If Ryan can see the outside, he will find that the most important blood pool in each blood's secret stronghold is slowly drying up, and at the same time, many wizards who have practiced the magic of the blood are suddenly discovering that the blood in the body begins to boil, get up and slowly disappear. These traitors thought they could steal the power of God, but today they will all be repaid. The blood man stood there shouting with his staff in his hands, and Ryan could also feel that the energy in him was getting stronger and stronger. Chapter 194, Blood God. It seemed that the blood man in front of him felt that he could not kill Ryan in a short time, so he decided not to go around with Ryan but to improve his strength in one breath, and then turned back and simply slapped the little worm. Ryan will not sit still. He tries to pour all the attack magic he can to the blood man standing in the middle of the hall. But unfortunately, all attacks are blocked by a waterfall-like barrier made of blood. Whether it is life magic or natural magic, even the most powerful lightning method returns without success, just aroused on the barrier ripples big and small. In the line of sight of Ryan, a dark cloud of dark red blood slowly formed on the top of the blood man's head, and he kept rolling on his head. Ryan even felt that there were countless innocent souls wailing. Can't go on like this, Ryan thought. It seems that now I can only take a chance to try the one-way method that I haven't called the Emperor. If I can't do it, I will only have one way to go. Thinking of this, Ryan took a deep breath and pulled out Clinway's teeth. After biting his finger and drawing a spell on the handle, he held the handle in both hands and stabbed the blood man straight. Sure enough, this blood barrier is not so versatile, and there is not much defense against such physical attacks. The blade easily sank into the blood. It was just different from what he had imagined. Ryan felt that the blade of the blade seemed to penetrate into the cotton, and could not help it lightly. The blood man felt the attack and turned his face without any organs to Lane, but Lane could see a mockery from above. Your little knife is quite interesting, but it's still far from hurting me. After the ridicule of anger, the blood man wanted to see Ryan's expression of panic and despair, but he only saw Ryan showing a relief smile. The blood man had a bad heart. As soon as he had to do something, he saw Ryan open his mouth and spit out a Chinese word. If the blood man understands Chinese, then he knows that the words Ryan said represent a terrible force, heavenly punishment. As Ryan's voice fell, purple lightning flew from the black hole above the blood man's head and flew straight at the blood man. Unlike Ryan's previous attack, the scars left on the blood man this time can no longer heal. Ryan felt a sigh of pain in the body caused by the current from the knife, but he was relieved. This is also a big trick for him to press the bottom of the box, induce the thunder and lightning to attack the enemy. Because the skill is not yet skilled, Ryan can only use the knife inserted into the enemy's body as a medium to guide the attack target. Fortunately, In order to draw strength, the blood man opened the door of the space to the outside world, which facilitated the inflow of external energy and at the same time allowed Ryan to communicate with the outside world. Sky punishment is actually a very special Taoism. On the one hand, it will damage all intelligent creatures near the target while attacking the target. The more evil, the greater the damage. However, even if there is a large amount of merit protection like Ryan, there will be some damage, and it cannot be completely exempted. On the other hand, the release of natural punishment is very demanding on the caster himself, because communicating the world requires absolutely precise mana control and requires the caster itself to have enough power to guide the advent of the lightning. The lineage Jade rune that Ryan got belonged to the last lineage left by a certain generation of heads of the Shenxiao school. The inheritance of the content is very detailed, so Ryan also has a mana control ability far beyond his current level, so he has no problem in this regard. However, in terms of his own strength, Ryan still has a certain gap from the requirement of using natural punishment, which caused Ryan himself to be seriously injured when attacking the blood, even if this injury is much smaller than that of the blood. But as the weak side, Ryan can only choose to bear everything. After all, there is no other way. The blood man who claimed to be a blood should have taken away the Witch King on the way back, so the daughter of the Witch King said before that he was no longer him after the journey to pursue longevity. Unfortunately, she was found to be a cocoon before waiting for her investigation. Before this blood man was only a blood source stone. He blocked the heavenly machinery by the block of the Witch King's body. Fortunately, Ryan just chose the lightning method to separate the body of the Witch King from the body of the blood source stone, which made her completely exposed to the punishment of heaven. And the powerful purple punishment thunder. This is the complete liquidation of Fang Tandi to him. People are small between heaven and earth, even as strong as the blood man in front of them. Struck by the thunder of thunder, Ryan saw with naked eyes the strength of the blood man in front of him was constantly weakening. The paralyzing effect brought by the punishment of the sky also prevented him from escaping the attack by closing the black hole connected to the outside world. The thunder was getting denser and denser, and finally formed a sky-high thunder column covering the mantle. The dazzling electric light made Ryan narrow his eyes. He felt a wave of stronger than a wave along his arms. Uploaded from the person www.mtlnovel.com like a sledgehammer hitting his heart, making him feel as if the heart would jump out of his throat in the next moment. With the last eruption, all the thunder and lightning disappeared. Ryan discovered that the blood man had become a piece of coke, and Clenville's teeth inserted in the blood man had only a knife handle. It seems that this battle was also a great loss. With a bang, the handle fell from the hand and fell on the ground. Ryan also spit out blood and immediately sat on the ground. He found that his injuries were heavier this time than before, but fortunately, his muscles and veins were much tougher after being stimulated by natural punishment. After recovery, it is estimated that it will be stronger than before, because Xiaoqing, as a pet connected to Ryan's soul, took the initiative to help Ryan take part of the damage in the just punishment, so she temporarily lost consciousness and fell off from Hermione. After the blood man was eliminated by the punishment, Hermione regained consciousness. Hermione's first reaction was to rush into the main hall to check the situation, and it just happened to see Ryan vomiting blood sitting on the ground. So she rushed up quickly to check Ryan's condition. "It's okay, it's just congestion. It's better to spit it out." Ryan tried to conceal his problems, but his pale face, trembling body, and flabby left arm made the concealment futile. It may be that Hermione just drove in the wind in the hall. The blood man turned into coke and quickly collapsed to the ground. Ryan had just stepped forward to check, and saw a sudden burst of blood from the pile of ashes to the body of the Witch King who had just been thrown to the ground. Ryan tried to stop this bloodlight, but his injured body made him react slower by half a beat, and the bloodlight sank into the body on the ground under the watch of two people. Chapter 195, Last Hit. The body of the Witch King on the ground began to tremble slowly after the blood was injected. Hermione saw that the situation was not good and raised her wand and released several spells at the Witch King's body. Although many things were shut down, it still couldn't stop the body from climbing slowly. Ryan temporarily disturbed the magic circle in the body because of the punishment. He could only pull out the left-hand liberator pistol and shoot at the climbing body one after another. After hitting a clip, the left arm of the body was successfully interrupted. Let it fall to the ground again because of imbalance. When Ryan changed his magazines in a hurry, the corpse that had fallen on the ground just because of his arm was standing up, and then a thick mass of blood poured from the wound to stick the broken arm back to his shoulder. When it lifted its face and looked at Ryan and them, Ryan and Hermione were startled at the same time. Different from the majestic old man who just sat on the throne, it may be because of the powerful magical protection of the blood source stone. This body decayed quickly. Ryan could see the carrion falling from his face one by one. Flame. Hermione's spell hit him. The spell burned his clothes, but when it burned to the skin, it quickly extinguished, leaving only a scorch mark the size of the mouth of the bowl. Unfortunately, this still did not stop him from moving on. All petrified. Another spell hit, but this time the purely controlling spell had no effect at all, and it still walked firmly towards the two people step by step. Ryan once again emptied the magazine. Unfortunately, the leg bones were stronger than the arm bones. The bullets left many visible wounds on the corpse's legs, but they still couldn't stop the living corpses from approaching. Ryan found that the body of the Witch King attached to the blood source stone was rapidly decaying, so for the blood source stone, it may need a new body. Thinking of it, I decided to gamble. You let it go. I have a way to deal with it. Ryan stood up with Hermione's help, and then whispered to Hermione. Hermione shook her head stubbornly and continued to cast a spell on the living corpse. In desperation, Ryan only knocked Hermione temporarily with a knife, and then struggling to support her body and dragging her feet to move towards the living body. As he approached the living corpse, he was picked up by the living corpse with his right arm. Ryan could even smell the rotten breath from his arm. Strongly enduring the meridian tingling, he used 6 magical power to form an internal breathing cycle, because the suffocation of the neck being strangled disappeared. At this time, the mouth opened by the living body, with a harsh voice like a nail scratching the blackboard, said, "You are now mine." "What a wonderful body, I will make good use of him." After talking about it, he opened his mouth violently, and the skin at the corners of the rotten mouth was completely ripped open, and his chin was directly attached to his neck. The whole mouth opened like a snake at 120 degrees. Ryan could see a thick cloud of blood rolling in his throat. At this time, the living body stretched out his left hand and tried to squeeze Ryan's mouth. It seems that the blood in his throat was the original bloodstone, but he lost all his defenses under the bombardment of the punishment. The most vulnerable ontology. This opportunity was simply great, and Ryan stretched out his hand and thrust it directly into the mouth of the living corpse. Then send a signal to the Sea of Knowledge. It's time for revenge. Countless soul-eating demon worms squirted out of Ryan's Sea of Knowledge, and then ran straight down Ryan's arm to the body of the bloodstone. No! Blood source stone screamed sternly, but it could no longer stop it. Although each soul-eater can only kill a little bit after it hits its body, and then it will be wiped out, but they still rush to the bloodstone, and Ryan can even vaguely hear those completely disappearing soul-eaters. The hearty laughter of those souls at the last moment. The screams of the blood source stone became smaller and smaller, and finally vanished into nothingness. The whole body also slowly burned from the inside out. The light blue flame grew stronger and stronger, until the whole body was burned to ashes before slowly extinguishing. After the flame was extinguished, a little bit of light like a firefly floated from the ashes. These light spots were gathered together and turned around for a few times before stopping. Then a light spot flew out of it and became a female soul. Looks like Ryan recognized her as the soul of the previous story that claimed to be the daughter of the Witch King. "Thank you." The soul performed an ancient courtesy to Ryan. "Thank you for helping my father get rid of it completely, and wiped out my father's enemies to revenge for my father. At the same time, others hope me to tell you, thank you for helping them complete their revenge. As a thank you, we have prepared some gifts for you." After that, the soul waved and 2 drops of blood flew out of the ashes on the ground. "The evil soul on that stone has been completely wiped out, but the essence left behind is just for you. It can help you strengthen the magical power in the blood and at the same time gain some new power." Because the remaining power of the natural punishment is still running in Ryan's body, Ryan easily judged that the energy contained in these 2 drops of blood is beneficial to humans. www.mtlnovel.com. So he did not block and let the 2 drops of blood go smoothly into the 2 of them. Sure enough, after the blood entered the body, Ryan felt that his injury was much better, and at the same time, he could feel that some impurities in the blood were being removed, and some strange power surged up. After watching Ryan accept the gift, the light from these souls turned around him a few times before slowly dissipating. Before completely dissipating, the soul of the Witch King's daughter said to Ryan, "This so-called kingdom is supported by the power of the blood source stone. After the natural blood source stone is destroyed, it will soon return to chaos. On the largest floor tile where the throne is located, you can open the door to the outside world. At the same time, there is a small floor tile next to the largest floor tile with all the belongings of the blood source stone underneath." After speaking, the soul of the Witch King's daughter waved at Ryan and disappeared. Ryan walked to the hall door and looked out. Sure enough, the space began to shrink slowly. A large amount of grey mist poured in from all directions, constantly engulfing the existing space. Now it's time to evacuate. Fortunately, this time Ryan's physical injury has recovered because of the blood drop just now. He awakened Hermione, and then she came to the edge of the floor with a little confused. Ryan first pried away the small floor tile, only to find that there was only one animal skin bag inside. If you don't want to check, he first hung the animal skin bag on his waist, and then entered the magic into the largest floor tile. With a little bit of magical input, a beam of golden light shot from the position of Sirius in the astrological map at the top of the hall, creating a golden door in the middle of the hall out of thin air. After Ryan and Hermione passed through the gate disappeared, and soon the grey mist poured into the hall, swallowing the entire space and erasing everything that had existed here. Chapter 196, Jedi Escape. Crossing the Golden Gate, Ryan was surprised to find that they came into an underground space. In the middle of the space was a normal-sized pyramid with a height of more than a dozen meters. There were some people in red robes who didn't know what to do. In the square inches front of the pyramid, there is a constantly rotating black hole spraying all kinds of things out. Ryan even saw the doomsday clock also sprayed out. It seems that it is not just the so-called divine kingdom that collapsed, but also the outer space where the pyramids with a height of 1,000 kilometers are built. While Ryan was thinking, several people rushed out of the black hole, and then the black hole closed. It seems that this should be the remaining people in that space who moved out all important things after finding out that the situation was wrong, and then retreated. The men shouted loudly as soon as they ran out, "It's not good, there are enemies coming in." The enemies triggered the organs in the blood temple to stop the doomsday clock's recharge, kill the president, and finally destroy the space. As soon as the words fell, the members of the blood gods in the square began to panic. At this time, another person got out of a small hole next to this place, and then panicked and shouted, "Not good." Proudlio and Castro Bruzio's professors appeared nearby. "I saw their companions attacking their companions, and they will soon find us." Hearing this news, the square was even more chaotic, when suddenly the sound of a mantra sounded. "Awada nibbles melon." A green light shot from the temple and hit the most fierce person who shouted in the square. Everyone stopped panic immediately, and the square became silent. "All, beep, shut up and listen to me." A middle-aged man wearing a blood-red and gold-rimmed robe walked out of the temple at the top of the pyramid. "The situation is not so bad now. There are enough traps and guards at our entrance. They need a lot of effort to get in. We still have enough time." The middle-aged people looked at the group of people underneath, and found that they all calmed down, and then ordered, "Gilberto, you take 10 people to the door to guard, and try to drag them down. Look here for the guy who just mixed into the space of the blood temple. The only exit after the space comes out is here. The phantom is prohibited from appearing here, so the destroyer must still be here. 100 who can be sent by the Errors to do this 100% is their elite. As long as you catch them, you can negotiate with the group above." As soon as the words fell, a man with a full face and 10 wizards ran out of the small hole where the wizard had just arrived to report, and the rest were completely dispersed, and it seemed that they were ready to arrest Ryan. As for it, adult wizards on the 20th and 30th come to catch 2 third-grade wizards. Ryan murmured secretly while using the caves around the place with the sober Hermione to hide and seek. In the process of escape, Ryan discovered a bad luck, because this time the injury was a bit serious. He can only maintain the normal level of magic in the 3rd and 4th grades for a month from now. After all, it is a spell that used far more than its own power level. In this case, the injury can be completely recovered is already a very good result. But for him who is running now, only this magic level is a very bad situation. With the help of illusionary mantra, the two also avoided a wave of chasing wizards. But later, a pale-looking, weak-looking wizard cut his arms and released blood, and then read a spell to his own blood. The blood on the ground quickly became a moth composed of slap-sized blood, and after hovering for a while, they flew over at Ryan, and the wizards chased after them like they found the treasure. Damn. The phantom body curse can't hide the smell of people, which is miserable. Ryan slowly raised his arm and aimed at the nearest chase who fired a coma spell, then pulled Hermione away. "They are there, don't let them run." The effect of the phantom spell still exists, so that the followers cannot judge Ryan's true identity, but the invisibility effect of the spell itself is completely destroyed. Soon this group of wizards caught up. After turning a few corners, another group of wizards suddenly appeared from the front and aimed at Ryan. They launched a spell. Thankfully, because of the previous practice, the two flexed the spell flexibly. But after this delay, the chasing soldiers soon arrived, and the two of them were trapped in this corridor. "Are caves open?" Hermione pointed to an iron gate at the moment and read it with a spell. The door opened, and the two immediately entered. Fluorescent flashes. Ryan raised his wand and began to look around. As a result, he saw a lot of bags piled in the corners and one wooden rack after another in the room. It was obviously a warehouse. Quick imprisonment. Ryan and the two locked the door with magic, and then piled the shelves behind the door with floating charms. The strange thing was that the wizard outside did not blow the door, but soon Ryan knew why. After transporting Zixia, he heard a sharp voice coming from outside the door. "Don't use explosive spells, the people inside must live, and if you die, you can't threaten the outside." That group of Errors. Soon, one spell after another hit the door. Ryan felt that the protective spell they had previously released on the door was crumbling. www.mtlnovel.com. So they raised their wands and tried to reinforce the protective spell on the door. However, due to the great difference in strength between the two of them compared to the wizards outside, soon the magic of the two was consumed by the attacks of those outside. Finally, the protective spell on the door disappeared. After a few seconds of silence, more than a dozen spells were hit on the door at the same time, leaving more than a dozen dents on the iron door. At this time, Ryan had no magic power to strengthen the defense. Fortunately, the iron gate blocked the first round of attacks, but this way it is likely that the iron gate will fall down in the next round or the next round. As soon as the first round of attacks was over, Ryan knew that he couldn't keep it inside and he could only take the last option. He communicated that the Wanji grocery store was ready for an emergency escape and was about to go to Hermione. He saw her suddenly walking towards the door. Ryan grabbed her and asked, "What are you doing?" Hermione, who was pulled back, sniffed her nose and said, "After all, the illusion spell did not disappear when we ran away. Those outside may not know how many of us there are. I'm going out now to lead them away. Maybe you are safe." "Stupid girl." Ryan shook her head with a smile, then took Hermione's hand and said, "I have a magic now. You just need to close your eyes. Don't resist when we have the power to pull you. We can escape." Hermione closed her eyes, and Ryan immediately launched an emergency escape. A golden light flashed over two people and disappeared from the warehouse. They just disappeared, and a new round of magic hit the iron gate. The iron gate could no longer support it, and suddenly the iron gate fell down to stir up a lot of dust. The dust hadn't fallen, and the wizards outside rushed in. But they found that the warehouse was empty, and the invisible people who had fled into the warehouse disappeared completely. Chapter 197. This is where, with a murmur similar to that of an airplane taking off and landing, the warehouse quickly became blurred and disappeared. Ryan felt a light and airy feeling coming from inside, as if the whole person had flown to the clouds. But this peaceful feeling did not last for a few seconds, and Ryan felt that the whole person began to spin uncontrollably, and a feeling of being pulled by an external force suddenly acted on him. Isn't it safe escape? What is the situation now? Ryan started to contact Wanji grocery store, and got an unoptimistic explanation. Although it is allowed to take people to escape, this behavior will destroy the magic balance of the space channel. Not to mention that a random passage is opened during an emergency escape, and it is not the most stable passage selected during daily passage through space. Although the power of the grocery store will try to protect the people in the escape route, it cannot completely avoid the impact. Ryan felt it carefully. The tearing from his body was indeed not very big. This should be the protection of the power of the noodle shop. Otherwise, he would face the space barrier between the noodles and they should have been turbulent by space for a long time. Shredded. Now if this level of trouble can use magic, it is estimated that ordinary iron armor curse can block these tears. But the problem is that now both people are in a state of magical exhaustion, so the damage will be much greater. Fortunately, it was the magic within the body and the meridians related to the spell that were hurt because of the punishment, not the injuries of the whole body. Ryan thought of condensing a little magical power that had just grown up in his body into a guardian thorn used to protect two people, and then hugged Hermione without any protection, and finally transported the purple Xia Shengong provides his only defense now. Ryan felt as if he had been thrown into the washing machine. Waves of various forces struck. Even if there is a Xia Shengong body protector, you can still feel the body as if it was cut with a blade. Fortunately, this is a space passage for the purpose of escape. Taking the safety of the escapee is the highest criterion. All the disadvantages are weakened to a minimum, so the destination finally arrived when he could not hold on. When he stepped on the ground with his feet, the whole person fell to the ground, and the previously recovered power was consumed in the space channel. The school uniform robe has become almost like a beggar outfit. At the same time, the turbulence in the space channel even cut his leather armor. Ryan can feel that 2 or 3 of the wounds have injured bones and even lungs. In addition, the unprotected places such as arms and calves are even worse. There are wounds on the surface, and some wounds can even see bones deep. He even feels that his limbs have begun to lose consciousness. Because the injury to his arm prevented Ryan from grasping Hermione anymore, Hermione rolled out of Ryan's arms under the impact of the landing. Although Ryan blocked most of the attacks, her back and calf exposed to the turbulence in the space channel were also bloody, and she could see that there were large and small wounds on it. Perhaps because of the pain, Hermione was sober at this time. She closed her eyes and asked in as smooth a tone as possible, "Are we escaping now?" "Yes, we escaped. It should be safe now." Hermione opened her eyes and looked at him as soon as Ryan's voice fell, and then showed a weak smile. "Great, we all survived." "Yes, although the injuries were somewhat serious, at least everyone survived." Seeing the wound on Ryan, Hermione's eyes quickly flashed with shock and guilt. She struggled to pull out her wand and said, "I think I will have some medical spells." "Let me help you stop the blood first." "Don't move, you lie there first. I'll be able to solve the wound on my body immediately," Ryan said, touching the space bag on his waist with hands, but the space bag was firmly tied there. "Not lost. Don't try to be brave at this time. There are so many wounds on your body. It will really kill you if you drag it for a long time," Hermione shouted in her weak voice. She had just crawled over to release a medical spell on Ryan, but suddenly stopped because she saw Ryan pulled out a metal syringe and stuck it to herself to inject herself. Then all the wounds healed at rate visible to the naked eye. "Who?" Ryan took a breath, then climbed up to Hermione with her elbows. The calf was too bad to stand up for now. Then he pulled out another syringe and pierced towards Hermione. After the medicine was injected into Hermione, the wound on her body healed quickly. "I have to admit that the treatment needle in the radiation world is so unscientific that as long as it is purely physical injury, even if the limb is disabled, it can help you grow back," Buchan said. "It is good. It's incredible. Hermione sighed as she watched her fast-healing wound, and then she turned her attention to Lane, and found that Lane was trying to stand up. The wound on his body had almost healed, and some of the scars were even falling off. Hermione suddenly closed her eyes, flushed read www.mtlnovel.com and then turned her head to the other side. Only then did Ryan find that he was chilling. After all, with so many wounds on his body, it was no better. Even if the leather armor doesn't break up to protect the main point, but the clothes in other places are definitely unsustainable. It seems that next time I'm going to the world of radiation to get some bulletproof cloth to make a suit. Ryan turned around while thinking. Because he is like this, it is estimated that Hermione's clothes are not much better. After all, everyone in the space aisle was busy keeping his life, and as for the clothes, he certainly did not care. Fortunately, after having this large space bag, Ryan used half of the space to store all kinds of daily necessities, and naturally there were clothes. It's just that all of them are clothes for the general in the radiation world, and they are not prepared for women. Fortunately, most people can wear their own size, not to mention that women enter adolescence earlier. So Hermione's body is not much worse than Ryan. The only problem is that Ryan does not have female underwear. He can only hope that Hermione's old clothes will continue to wear. After throwing a dress of the volunteers to Hermione, Lane ran behind a large rock to change clothes. Here I would like to praise the housework magic in the British magic world. The blood on the body will soon be cleaned and cleaned. Soon the two men each wore an American Revolutionary-style military uniform to share dry food and water on the stones. After eating and drinking, a problem lay in front of them. No matter how long they are in the world when they go out, only 1 hour will pass, but because this is an emergency escape, the grocery store system needs at least 1 week to locate and connect the passage of the two worlds. So now I have to live in this world for at least a week. In this case, the most important information Ryan needs to know is what is the general situation of this world. Chapter 198, Strange Forest. Although the blood loss caused by the injury just made both of them look white, but other aspects are okay. After sitting on the spot for a while and restoring some of the magic, they stood up to look around. After a while, Hermione asked suddenly and curiously, "Where is this?" The surrounding environment is not an Amazon rainforest at all, but like continental Europe. "Well, I have something terrible to tell you." Lane paused and said, "We are no longer in the Amazon rainforest. I already know the environment, but at least you can bring us, and I believe you can bring us back. Thank you for trusting me, but I think we should not be in the original world." "What? Did we just die because of our escape just now?" The expression on Hermione's face was shocked first, then calm. "I'm sorry, it was because I went to save the second-year Ravenclaw girl that I was involved in this kind of thing, and thank you for the good faith deception that made me less fearful and painful at the last moment. The only regret is you may not be owed a life. But it seems that the world after death is not so bad." No wonder the ghosts said that they stayed in the world and said that they were not brave enough or cared too much to continue, which is actually very bad. At the same time, with an envious tone saying that true death is just another great adventure. Ryan coughed a little embarrassingly, and it was obvious that Hermione was misunderstood. After all, there are not so many online novels popularizing the concept of traversal everywhere in this era, and the first reaction when it is not in the original world is that it is dead. You don't have to apologize for your good deeds, and things are not as bad as you think. I mean, we may be on another Earth. In this case, Ryan felt that something had to be explained. "I have the ability to go to a parallel world, but every time I travel in space and time, I have to die for a lifetime. This time, I have to activate that ability. I have to rest for a while after each ability is launched. So I think we may have to stay in this place for a while." "Oh, that's it." After all, American films Return to the Future series in the past 2 years, and Hermione quickly accepted the concept of parallel world. She was silent for a moment, then turned to smile slightly at Ryan. "I think we should be able to spend this time smoothly together, right?" Ryan nodded firmly. He saw that Hermione was a little uneasy when he came to this sentence because he reached a strange place, so he assured her with a firm answer. Afterwards, in order to relax the tense nerves along the way, the two started chatting with me. As the conversation continued, the two's emotions slowly returned to normal. The goddess of luck also favored them at this time. After descending from a small mound overgrown with tall trees, they found a road covered by fallen leaves under the mound. Aside from the fallen leaves, you can see how strong this road is. Many people have come and gone from here before, but the thickness of the fallen leaves on the road surface indicates that no one has left this road for at least a year or two. However, a pile of fresh horse dung on the roadside and a few new lines of horseshoe marks on the road show that the road may still be in use a few days ago. It seems that this road is deserted, but at least there are still people walking on this road. It seems that there is no hope of sleeping in the wild tonight, because the money in the wizarding world seems to be gold and silver coins, at least by non-magic means, and these hard currencies are universal in most human worlds. But now the question is, which end of the road is closer to the human settlement? Because they don't know the specifics of this world at all, and the magic of the way can only point north and not the human settlement. After they didn't find anything else to refer to, they could only gamble their luck by simply throwing their wands. After determining the direction, the two people went down the road in one direction. After all, they walked so far before and found no magical creatures that could threaten them. So I feel that this world may not have much danger, even if this should be within the range that two people can cope with. In this case, the two little wizards spent the night in the wild, which was not too dangerous. That's why they used this method to decide where to go next. After walking along this road for a while, it was getting dark and the temperature was getting lower and lower. Ryan thought it might be because the forest was colder at night, so he put a warming spell on himself and Hermione and went on. But as they walked away, they felt more and more wrong. www.mtlnovel.com. Just now they passed the local plant's evergreen, and the temperature was between spring and summer. And now it is getting colder and colder, even approaching the winter temperature, which is not natural. Turning around a small slope, they were surprised to find that there was a scene of white forest and snow in front of them. Okay, take back what you just said. This world is not only magical, but also powerful. The world that can at least transform a region from summer to winter will definitely not be a normal world without magic. What can cause this kind of unnatural wonder is that the magic level of this world is not worse than the original world, but it is not known whether this phenomenon is natural or artificial. I thought that the two of them looked at each other, pulled out their wands to stay alert, and continued to move forward because they found that the pavement here is better than in the forest just now, which means that it is closer to the human settlement. Now Ryan and they cannot judge the specific situation of this world, so they can only go as far as possible to appear to be a smoky place. Under the touch of Ryan's natural magic, this forest did not feel any evil breath. Maybe people in this world like to live in the snow. After discussing a few words, Ryan and Hermione decided to continue down the road. After walking for another half an hour, they saw a magnificent castle at the end of the road. It seems that the destination is coming soon. Suddenly the sound of a horseshoe broke the silence in the forest. The supernatural ice and snow that appeared in the warm area, the sound of horseshoes in the snow, and the first reaction of Ryan connecting these is whether it will be the great dutiful son Elsass. It would be dead if he directly touched his words. Thinking of here, Ryan took Hermione to hide behind a tree, raised her wand and looked towards the place where the hoof sounded. Chapter 199, To Hermione! Oh! Suddenly howling wolf came from a close distance, and Ryan was running Zixia divine power to hear the man riding like a wolf before chasing. Soon, a man on a white horse appeared in Ryan's sight. Regardless of whether the armor is seen on the horse or the person, this should not be a big filial son, Ryan relieved. It was just that the knight looked awkward and was chased by the wolves behind him off the road and ran to a branch on the roadside lane. I saw that it seemed like a woman with no weapons. It might be dangerous to be chased down by a wolf like this. We should go over and see if we might be able to help. Hermione just said something to Ryan just now. Okay, I heard the sound seems to be here. Let's cut the way through the forest. After the two of them walked out from behind the tree, they drove in the direction of the knight and the wolf pack. After all, this is the first living person they saw in this world. If they were eaten by wolves, God knows when they will meet the next person. Not to mention that the wolves just ran and did not see any magic, and 5 or 6 ordinary wolves obviously could not cause any harm to the two wizards. The two walked out of their hiding place and trekked under Ryan's guidance. I have to say that Hermione is a very serious person. After Ryan taught her some assassin training methods to her last year, she has been practicing, so even if there is snow she can still keep up with Ryan's footsteps quickly. Wait, the man just now riding seemed to be accidentally stuck on the ice now. Oops. The wolves surrounded him. While running, Ryan suddenly heard some terrible information, so he grabbed Hermione. We are not fast enough now. You come to my back and I run with you. Hermione nodded and climbed to Ryan's back. Ryan's Zixia circulated her body, and then quickly began to move in the forest. They quickly rushed through the hundreds of meters of wood and came to a frozen pond. They came just in time. The horseman just stood beside the horse, and a monster with feet that looked more than 2 meters tall was besieged by a group of wolves. The coma curse. First stun everyone who is not a man before talking, Lane said as she lowered Hermione. Because for the time being it is not clear what the situation is, then simply remove the threats that seem threatening. The stunned ground X2 red spell squirted from the heads of the two people's wands. The wolf and the monster biting into a ball were a good stationary target, so the two spells successfully stunned the two wolves. After the battle entered garbage time, wolves and monsters were successfully knocked out. The wolf with the wounded eye tried to run and attack Ryan, but Zixia did not hide Ryan when the magical power was working. As he approached, Ryan pulled out the Liberator's pistol on his left leg and killed it. At this time they saw the rider hesitating next to the horse and then ran towards the monster, then crouched down to check the condition of the monster. We seem to have hurt our ally by mistake, Lane said a little embarrassed to Hermione. I didn't expect that there are non-human intelligent creatures in this world. Fortunately, It's just a coma curse. We should go down now. After speaking, Hermione took the lead and walked towards the two people. Hello. Is there anything we can help you with? Hermione asked the woman who was half kneeling next to the monster after walking on the ice, but the answer was not in English. Therefore, it is said that all the world speaks Chinese or English or Japanese. It is written by those authors or directors to save trouble. How is it possible in reality? Fortunately, the language opposite is also human language, only French. Fortunately, both of them can understand French. The English language of British elementary school is usually French. Hermione, who is a learner, naturally learns well on this, and Lane has strengthened the French part of the assassin Kenway heritage. After all, the French in the Caribbean Sea was also one of the powerful forces. It is a must to speak French as a pirate captain in that kind of place. In the French paragraph just now, the woman was asking for help because the monster had a wound and she wanted to take the monster back to the castle to heal. The already unconscious monster is too heavy for her to move, so he hopes Ryan and they can help put the monster right away. No problem, Mom. Ryan stepped forward and cast a spell at the monster, Nugadim Leviosa. Using the wand, he directed the monster to float away, and Hermione released some beside him. The spell kept the monster's wounds from bleeding. After putting the monster on the horse, the woman thanked her again, and after releasing the hemostasis spell on the last wound, Hermione turned to comfort the woman. Okay, this lady, please rest assured, your friend, said here. Hermione looked up and saw the other person's face, and then the word suddenly stopped. Hermione, what happened? I could hear Hermione's words halfway, and suddenly there was no sound behind. Stand there without hair. What are you two doing? Although he stopped the blood, he still wanted to find a warm spot as soon as possible, otherwise it would be bad for the wound. Ryan finished looking at the two men, then rubbed his eyes in surprise because I saw to Hermione. No, not right. After a closer look, Ryan found that the situation in front of her was exactly that. A young Hermione and an adult Hermione stood together with her eyes wide open. I know it's a magical thing to meet someone who looks like me in the vast sea, but there is nothing to say on the road. Standing in the snow is not a good idea. At this time Lane thought he seemed like know which world you are in. Oh, okay, you're right, Lane. The two ladies reacted at the same time, and then the three men guarded the beast on the horse and walked along the road to the distant castle. Belle, my name is Belle. Today I really thank you very much, otherwise I really don't know what to do with the injured beast. After walking quietly for a while, the one who looked like an adult Hermione, the female, first opened her mouth and broke the loneliness. My name is Ryan, and her name is Hermione. We are wizard apprentices, and we are using magical travel this time, but unfortunately we made a mistake and fell into the woods. If we didn't meet you, we might really be in the snow tonight camping here. That's it. I'm staying in his castle for now. Belle pointed to the beast on horseback. The castle is very large. There should be no problem entertaining you for one night. Then thank you. Hermione thanked. A wrought iron gate appeared in front of them, and the beast's castle arrived. Chapter 200, Castle Holiday. On the vast Lanhaixuian, the beast's castle stood like a huge shadow. The vines and rust covered the iron fence. The outer wall of the castle building was full of abrasion caused by time. A large number of monster statues stood on all corners of the castle as decorations, adding even more terrible to the place. After entering the iron gate, you can see a huge garden in front of the castle. But now because of the snow, most of the plants are not submerged under the thick snow. Ryan kicked a part of the snow and found that they had withered. In short, the former glory can be seen from the scale and various details of the castle, but now the glory has passed away for some reason, and the rest of the castle looks gloomy. Down the stairs in front of the gate, everyone stopped. Ryan used a floating charm to move the beast from the horse and levitate up the stairs. Standing at the gate of the castle, Belle turned around and said to Ryan, "There are a lot of interesting people in this castle, but they look strange now. I hope you are not surprised." Belle then looked at Ryan as they raised their wands to move the beast. He smiled and said, "Oh, I have forgotten that you are wizards, and you should have seen a lot of magical things." After Belle opened the door, the hall was a little dark, and only a few candles were shining slightly here. "Where should we send the wounded?" Hermione asked with his wand. "I remember having his bedroom in the west tower. Come with me." Then Belle took them up the main stairs of the castle. "Ah, Miss Belle, you are finally back. We thought you would never return." As soon as they walked up the stairs, they saw a bronze human-shaped candlestick and an alarm clock coming over to greet them. "This is simply amazing." Hermione and Lane both showed expressions of wonder. Even though Ryan already knew what was going on, he was very surprised to see the fairy tale appear in front of him. Especially after more than 2 years of formal transformation classes, he can now really feel how powerful the magic on these furniture, or precisely the servants, imposed on their predecessors. When the candlestick and the alarm clock saw the monster being carried over, they were immediately excited. "Miss Belle, what's wrong with our host?" "Sorry, I was besieged by wolves when I was just out of the castle. Your master was bitten by wolves in order to save me. Fortunately, the two wizards behind me reached out in time to help us drive away the wolves and help your master stop the blood. It's just not convenient for treatment outside, so I asked the two wizards to send him back." "Ah, This is it. After that, the candlestick waved the candle in his hand to guide them. Please come with us. On the way to the West Tower, Lane could feel a lot of gaze around them without looking maliciously, but when he looked down at him, he found nothing. These should all be servants who have been turned into various furniture. Thinking of Ryan launching life magic and investigating here, it turns out that there are many lives following them. It's just that these lives are a bit strange. In the vision of the life magic investigation launched by Ryan, their fire of life is more rigid than normal creatures. This situation aroused Ryan's interest, but it is clearly not the time to study this. The West Tower is very tall, and it feels about the same height as the Gryffindor Tower. When Ryan used magic to move the beast to his bed and apply white fresh fragrance to the wound, a sense of fatigue hit their minds. After all, they didn't have a rest for a whole day today, especially those battles and expeditions in the pyramid risked their lives, which made their previous spirits tense. Not to mention the severe injuries sustained through the space-time tunnel and the subsequent trek in the forest for several hours. I have finished the wounds of the wounded, and these wounds are expected to be better tomorrow morning. Because he was injured today and hemorrhage, the whole person will be weak and uncomfortable. So I will not lift the coma curse on him. Letty took a good night's sleep tonight, so that he won't feel the wound so painful tonight, and it would be better for him to wake up naturally after tomorrow's medicinal effect. Ryan shook his head and woke up, then turned to the candlestick next to him. Speaking with the alarm clock. Thank you, I think it's too late today. Please let me guide the accommodation for your two guests. The candlestick said elegantly to them. Ryan woke up Hermione, who was already sitting on a stool and began to doze, and then followed the candlestick to the side room of the main fort, leaving Belle still in the house. Thank you very much today, otherwise our host would be in danger. The candlestick walked ahead and said to Ryan, no need to thank. In that case, as long as the capable person will lend a helping hand. Lane nodded to the candlestick. www.mplnovel.com. I have a ruthless feeling, although I think this request may be a bit too much for the savior of your two masters. From the main building down the tower, in the corridor the candlestick in that said suddenly, it's all right, please. You just said that you are a wizard who is traveling, so can you stay in this castle for a few more days? The human-shaped candlestick stopped and turned around. The two hands rubbed together with embarrassment. Collision sound. Let's talk about this after discussing it tomorrow morning. After all, we have been busy all day today, and now there is a lot of paste in our heads. Guests, you can think slowly, and tell me the answer tomorrow morning. Well, we are here. Then, they came to a door with a creamy gold border. Opening the door, there is a luxurious baroque living room with a door on each side leading to the same gorgeous bedroom, except that everything is covered with a thick layer of grey. We really didn't expect that there will be so many guests in these 2 days, but we will be able to clean it up immediately. After speaking, the candlestick looked like it was going to call someone. Oh, don't bother them. Ryan stopped the candlestick, then pulled out his wand and read, clean it up. With the wand pointing, the whole room was cleaned. It's really magical magic. Then please allow me to leave now. Just pull the bell at the head of the bed at night. Sir, miss, good night. After finishing the candlestick, he bowed out of the room. Also closed. Yeah, yawn. Hermione yawned, covering her mouth. Good night Lane, see you tomorrow morning. Okay, good night. Ryan returned to his room after he finished, and fell asleep as soon as he took off his coat on the bed.